see, these things keep popping up too. Little technical glitches. Here we go. Let's get everybody on board. There we go. I'm here with Paul Roberson, my web person, for those that haven't seen him. This is the guy that's worked with me for years behind the scenes, running my website, doing the Pulpwood Queen newsletter. He is amazing. We're both University of Texas graduates. Of course, you know, he was a baby. You know, there's Stephanie. Ups, we got you on here. Let's go back to gallery view. Hey, Stephanie, we're glad you all are here. Hello. So I'm going to start because we got to keep going. You guys admit people, but this is the Pulpwood Queen Presents Authors. And I'm just going to go down the list of the order that we're going in, and I'll cut you off. I'm going to say 15 minutes starts now. Stephanie Chance is going to go first. T.K. Thorne, Richard Fifield, Carolyn Haines, Pamela Fagan Hutchins, R.J. Lee, Leslie Lehr, Judithe Little, Janet Oakley, Kathleen Rogers, and Rebecca Rosenberg. And we're going to finish at 5:30. So let's keep on task. So Stephanie, the author of Mamma Mia, Saints, Sinners, and Escapades, and her Decorate Ornate tours of her trips to Italy and beyond. She's the official tour guide of the Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys International Book Club Reading Nation. So welcome, Stephanie.
Hello, hello.
I got Paul with me.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Stephanie.
Wonderful to see you.
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm so excited to be here today, and I'm going to take y'all as the author of the Mamma Mia trilogy. This is the 21st year taking 2 and 3 groups of Americans to Italy and all over Europe. And as soon as we get on the bus and we land in whatever country we're landing in, I'll give you just a little happening of what happens. I had a doctor, Dr. Ray-Bay, that has gone with me several times. And as we get on the bus, we always have different ones to ask certain questions. And we've been in Rome. We've been to the San Sebastian catacombs. We've been to where Peter and Paul were taken after they were martyred. We've been through the Sistine Chapel. We've been through the Vatican. We've been and done so many unusual things that the normal tourist wouldn't do because of Tony's connections of his best friend that's been inside the Vatican for 50 something years. As we get back on the bus, we're heading to Florenza. We're going to the Renaissance city of Florenza, or Florence, Italy. And I have someone on the bus, which is Dr. Ray-Bay. And he said, Stephanie, can you tell me about Michelangelo? What is the connection you keep talking about with why was he buried in Rome when he was from Florenza, Italy? And I said, well, he wasn't from Florenza. He was just out of a Caprese, just a little ways from Arezzo. But I'll skip around just a tiny bit, but the Medici, the famous Renaissance Medici family took Michelangelo in. His daddy was a government official, kind of like a city worker. And here was Michelangelo, and he couldn't get Michelangelo interested in studies. He wanted him to be an accountant, but Michelangelo wanted to paint and draw, and he would sit in class and he was totally disinterested in learning accounting. So he was continuously painting, chiseling away and things. So his dad asked the Medicis, which run Florence, Italy, can you help my son, Michelangelo? He said, I don't know. He said he can't. He wants to dilly-daddle around all day long with the people, you know, painting and stuff. And I want him to be an accountant or something prestigious. So anyway, that's how that particular thing started. And as we're walking into Santa Croce, the beautiful where the leather is in the famous square of Santa Croce, we look up and and I'm telling everybody as the tour guide, I'm said, this is the beautiful basilica where Michelangelo is buried. And it has a huge Star of David on the very top of the basilica. And everybody is wondering why the Star of David. anyway, that is just some of the tidbits of why we have people that go, and I love to tell them about the history and take them into the places. But inside beautiful Santa Croce Basilica, the Star of David represents the Jewish people. And Michelangelo loved the Jewish people because being with the most wonderful teachers in the world by the Medicis, they had the Jewish people that worked for them. They taught Michelangelo Hebrew. And then as he gets older, one of the popes that was in the Vatican was a Medici. And he had Michelangelo to come. He called him and said, I need you to come to the Vatican because I want you to paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And Michelangelo didn't want to go, and he refused to go. And skipping around over the years, at the age, I believe it was just right under 89 years old, Michelangelo kind of got into a little bit of a battle. He went against the Medici family in something that was going on, and he sided with Martin Luther. And the Medicis, he was run out of Florenza, and he ran to Rome. And he ended up dying in Rome. And did you know that Cosimo de Medici, he loved him. He wanted to bring him back to Florence, and they snuck him out. They put him on an old wooden cart, covered him up with rags, and they snuck him back into Florenza. They stole him back. So anyway, you'll have to read chapter 4, page 19, and you're going to learn about a doctor, Dr. Ray Bay, that hopped aboard with us, and he wanted to know more about the Medicis, about how in the world he ended up dying in Rome. And it was just so complicated. And then he wanted to meet a monk. So anyway, I love to talk about the history. I love to write about the true stories that they get into. And I end up writing most of the chapters over in Europe, wherever we're at, whether it be a monk's cell in a monastery, or on the French Riviera, or in Greece in Scopolis, where they filmed the Mamma Mia movie. But anyway, it's such an honor to be here. Kathy, the famous Pulpwood queen, my dear friend that I love dearly, has been with me. She has been on those winding, narrow roads going through Greece, southern Italy. She's been on the escapades to where Nino, my driver, had to stomp on the brakes and stop the bus because something very extraordinary appeared on the road. You've got to read about it in the book, because Kathy made, I think, 2 or 3 chapters. So Kathy is quite scandalous when you take her on a tour. Anyway, it's such a privilege to be with all of y'all. I've enjoyed it so much, and I can't wait to join y'all again. There's nothing greater than being with the authors, that we become such a tight-knit family of authors at the Pulpwood Queen's Girlfriend Weekend. It is so extraordinary. I tell everybody, if you can do anything, go to the Pulpwood Queen Girlfriend Weekend, meet the authors, learn about them personally. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Stephanie, we'll be telling some more stories tonight, so please join the Slumber Party celebration. And next up, we have TK Thorne, who is Teresa. She has The House of Rose, a Magic City story, but she has more books. And I'm going to preface by saying that, do you know that her secret desire was to meet aliens? Take it away, Teresa. Hit unmute in the lower corner on the left-hand side. There you go.
Oh, well, okay. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Paul. And hi, Queens. I can't wait to introduce you to my Rose. She looks just like me, except she is younger, taller, thinner, with good lips, and a police officer in the city of Birmingham, Alabama. Otherwise, we're exactly the same. Rose was born while I was brushing my teeth. 3 words literally popped into my head out of the blue, and I knew she was lurking around somewhere, waiting for a chance to come out and tell her story. The words were, "You're a hero," but little did I know they would involve murder, magic, and mayhem in the Magic City. I let her out, and Rose set herself down in the middle of every police officer's nightmare. She chased a suspect down a dark alley and had to shoot him. She felt anything but a hero. Then things became even more complicated when she turns out to be a witch. I actually was a police officer in Birmingham, but not a witch, usually. That said, there is some reality mixed in with the magic. Birmingham earned the name the Magic City in the late 1800s, when all 3 ores needed to make steel were found in close proximity. This made the city very unique. In fact, a boomtown sprang up so fast that it seemed like magic. It was a southern version of the Wild Wild West, like Texas maybe. Time passed and the steel industry died out by Rose's time, but those ores beneath the earth attracted 3 ancient houses of witches and warlocks, and each uses them for their unique powers. When Rose shot the man in the alley, she saw something impossible. And even though she was not supposed to, she started her own investigation into what happened. That led her to a certain house not far from her own, and an elderly woman with a British accent who claimed she was Rose's great-great Aunt Alice and a witch. After several bouts of denial, Rose decides to humor Alice and see if she has any powers of her own. "Tell me again why I have to sit on the ground to do this?" I asked grumpily. "Because, dear, the closer to the power source, the easier to draw the living green. And for the first time, the safer." I alert on the last word. Safer? "Well, we don't want to pull from the living." "Why not?" "It would kill them." She looks horrified, but I'm confused. If the living green isn't the living green, what is it? "I do see your point. We use coal for magic, so we don't hurt anything alive. Coal is a condensed version of plants that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. It isn't living now, but it once was." "So we're miners?" She smiles. "Yes, but we skip all the messy parts of having to bring it to the surface and ignite it to release the energy it contains. Much cleaner." We have tipped the believability scale here, and I don't buy a word of this. "People always underestimate the power of nature. Think of it this way. Plants evolved to take in sunlight and make it an energy source. Humans ingest plants for energy. Witches are humans with a special adaptation. We all have evolved to take and use energy in vastly different ways. Yet at its heart, it is the same energy. E equals mc squared. I've just never heard of witches using coal for magic." "Well, what have you heard?" she asked, an annoyed edge to her voice. I try to keep a straight face. "Only what I've read in stories. Witches use potions and spells." "I see." She sits straighter. "Potions is just a word for medicine made of various herbs and other ingredients." "Yeah, but the ingredients seem to include bat's wing or eyeball of something." "And I suppose," she snaps, "the witches are always old hags with long crooked noses who wear black hats and fly around at night on a broomstick." "Absolutely." Her beryl eyes are flashing. Nonsense. Those are stories told by ignorant people. I have never used a bat's wing or an eyeball in my life. She sniffs and adds, or even seen a recipe for it. Rose is a dedicated loner, but she is no match for Angel, a small gray cat that adopts her, or Becca, who decides to be Rose's best friend. So let's meet Angel and Becca. Entering my house, I turn on the living room lights, not wanting any dark corners, thinking about the sensation of being followed, when I realize I'm not alone. What are you doing here? I say with a start. A small cat is curled on my favorite chair. Observant cop that I think I am, I completely missed it when I came in. It considers me with unblinking gold eyes. There is no way a cat got into my house unless I pull my gun from my purse and check all the windows and the back door. The windows are closed, locked, all of them. When I return to the living room, the mystery cat is still there. I sit on the sofa and we regard each other. It is gray and very skinny, and the left ear has a piece missing from some recent mishap. Finally, feeling like a complete idiot, I say, "Did Alice send you?" No response from the cat, thank God, and my cell phone rings. It's Becca. "Hey girl," she says, "how's the detective gig going?" "Fine. What are you doing?" "My nails. You?" "I'm staring at a cat on my chair." "Really? You have a cat? I didn't know you were a cat person." "Well, I seem to have a cat, but I have no idea how it got in my house." "Maybe it ran in when you closed the door. Cats do that. They're quick." "Maybe. Want to have lunch tomorrow?" she asks. God, that sounds so normal. "Yes, I'll call you in the morning." When we click off, the cat looks at me and blinks. I open the front door to see if it will leave, but it doesn't seem the least bit interested in the door or in leaving. I think about picking it up and putting it outside, but what if it appears back in my house? That would just be too freaky. And it looks pretty pitiful. "Okay, you can stay, but just for the night." The next day, Rose meets Becca for lunch. Becca tilts her head and squints at me. "You look tired, Rose. What's wrong?" Unaccustomed to people who can read me, I wince. "Just a little sleep deprived. No sense worrying her. I'm not used to having something in my bed." For a frozen moment, our eyes meet before we both erupt into laughter. When Becca can talk again, her brown eyes dance with mischief. "The cat, I presume?" "Yeah." "If it's somebody else, you better tell me." "Tell you?" "Rose, you haven't the slightest idea how to be a girlfriend." Now let's meet Jason from the powerful and dangerous House of Iron, a devastatingly handsome warlock whose house may be behind an attempt to kill Rose, has invited her to dinner. Aunt Alice has warned Rose not to go. So, of course, she does. The club is a private dinner club atop Red Mountain overlooking the city, very posh. I wear my black dress and a pair of heels I bought, which are killing me. Here I am, for the sake of gaining intelligence about House of Iron, practically standing on my toes, trying not to fall on my face. By the time I make it to the private dining room, I'm scowling. "Ciao, Rosa," Jason greets me, rising from his chair at a table by the expansive window and pulling out my chair. A bottle of wine chills in a small bowl on a stand by the table. I've seen setups like this in movies, but this is out of my comfort zone. I watch Jason go through the sophisticated dance of tasting the wine. I'm afraid to look directly at my date. He almost hurts the eyes. Suddenly, Becca's voice is in my head. Oh my God, Rose, does he have a brother? That breaks the spell and I smile. Thank you, Becca. So, has anyone tried to kill you lately? Jason asked. Actually, I have managed to outwit a sniper since we last saw each other. His face, which I'm watching carefully, hardens. He missed, I assume. How do you know it was a he? Now it is his turn to laugh. Be easy, detective. I do not know that. It was a chauvinistic guess. The waiter sets down a basket that smells heavenly. Jason folds back the white linen to reveal the warm breads inside. You must try an orange roll, house specialty. I bite into it and close my eyes. After I swallow, my tongue finds the bits of crystallized sugar on my lips. Jason clears his throat. I am not certain if I wish to eat or simply watch you eat. I open my eyes, my earlobes burning, and snatch at the menu. I order fish and he orders lamb. Appropriate. I feel like a lamb stalked by a wolf and wonder if I use deodorant to last through dinner.
So save the rest of your story for tonight and we'll share it then. Okay. You got it?
Thank you.
Okay. We got to go on to our next author. You guys have just 15 minutes. So now I want to introduce Richard Fifield. I saw him here. Huh?
Hi.
Hi, King Richard.
Can you hear me, darling?
I love you. And you're reporting in from Montana. I'm not going to
Lord.
anymore because you're going to be talking about the small crimes of Tiffany Templeton. Go ahead.
Hi. So yes, I am zooming from snowy Montana. It is freezing. It is terrible. It's horrible. And when I see Miss Kathy, I think sunshine. I think Texas. I think all things incredibly awesome. You know, Kathy gave me my very first taste of the book world at a Pulpwood Queens convention in 2016. And, you know, ever since then, I've been indebted to her. And I guess I overdressed for the occasion, but this is what I wear to bed. So it should be not surprising to anyone that showed up in my pajamas. But, you know, I'm here ostensibly to talk about a book, this book, but, you know, when I was thinking about it today, you know, these 15 minutes are really, really precious. And I really wanted to talk about why we do what we do and why it's so important. You know, storytelling is precious. It's a gift. And, you know, I thank Kathy, I thank Mandy, and I thank all of the book clubs that are under the auspices of the Pulpwood Queens, because story is everything and story changes lives. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. You know, I can't follow rules, obviously, since I'm wearing a tiara and my moonstone jewelry. The lighting's not great, but I tried. So I wanted to talk a little bit about storytelling and tell you about where I came from and how I got here and how I ended up with a crown on my head. I blame Kathy for that one. So I grew up in a very, very, very small town in Montana. I was born in 1975 and our population was 900. And I grew up with a single mother. And, you know, early on, I realized that I love to read, I love to write because I could escape. When you are a young gay person who realizes they're gay when they're 6 years old because they've been watching General Hospital and they're like, Rick Springfield is so dreamy. And they're like, that's probably not appropriate. You learn to hide. And I found my hiding place in books. Unfortunately, when I would go to our public library, which was the only place to get books, there were no books about gay people in my library. Every book that I could get my hands on that had a gay character in it, that person was either a murderer or miserably unhappy, or they killed themselves. And there was not a book of a story that I could read that would make me feel better about who I was and make me feel not alone. And, you know, I think about my mother. She passed away last year. And when she did, everything kind of changed for me as far as storytelling, because, you know, my mom did the best that she could with what she had in a small town. She was the first woman to own a business in a small town. But she was also constantly marrying complete assholes, drunk assholes. And she was a victim of domestic violence. And I witnessed a lot of domestic violence. And if she had had access to a story in which a woman was able to leave an abusive relationship and flourish and be safe and find other people who shared her story and not marinate in shame, things might have been different, but those stories did not exist. And so what I want to tell all of you today is that what you do by reading and writing and supporting authors and supporting all of us is you're helping so much. Even if it's fiction, the stories that you tell can change lives. And to me, that's a miracle. I was a social worker for a really long time, and being an author, I got to teach memoir classes. And I started teaching memoir classes about 5 years ago to women all over Western Montana in rural communities. And it was the best gift I've ever been given in my life. And it was the sweet spot of social work and writing. And it was an absolute honor to go into a room of women and, you know, you could see a woman coming in to workshop a story that she wrote about her own life, about her own abuse, about her own pain, her own suffering that she's kept to herself, that she's never told anyone else. And when she reads it aloud, you can see it leave her body. You can see the relief. You can see the shame evaporate. And other people, you know, have shared your experiences. You're not alone, but you have to let people know what your story is so they can help you. And this is my current book right now, this one, but this is the book that I love the most because I self-published it this last year, and it's 41 stories that Montana women wrote about their lives. And we toured 41 public libraries in 2 months, and the women read from their books. And at each and every library we went to, we partnered with that town's local nonprofit for women. So if somebody in the audience heard something that was triggering or upsetting, or they knew somebody that, you know, could benefit, those resources were on hand immediately. So it's not like we would go to a library in Eureka, Montana, have a woman read a story, traumatize them, and just leave and be like, bye, good luck. We wanted to make sure we left an infrastructure in place, because when you hear your own story read out loud, it really is a miracle. And, you don't feel alone. And, we're only as sick as our secrets. And a lot of us keep secrets that we shouldn't keep secret, because it changes the way that we move through the world and how we interact with people. And during this last year with COVID, even my Zoom memoir workshops, we cry. There was one month, it was quite memorable. It was in May. 5 of the women out of 11 participants were ashamed to admit they had started taking antidepressants. And when they did, the other 4 were like, me too, me too, me too. And it was amazing. And we all cried, because it was like the shame that these women were carrying, that because of the world we live in right now, they had to seek some sort of solace. And in this case, it was antidepressants. So, I want to just reiterate how important it is to tell diverse stories and to tell truthful stories. And, I'm a fiction writer, but this book, The Small Crimes of Tiffany Templeton, which is the book I'm supposed to be promoting, sorry. I
be sure
wanted
and tell
to,
them the name
yes.
of the Montana women's stories. We'll add it to the list, hon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to. So anyway, $1 from every sale of this book goes to Humanities Montana for women in rural areas to get arts education. And $1 from every sale also goes to the Zootown Arts Community Center to do their battered women writing program. So the book's a charity book. But I have to talk about my fiction book. And it does dovetail with what I'm talking about, because I talked about the shame of growing up different and how that shame followed me for the rest of my life and affected everything that I touched and the way I had relationships with people, because I thought that what I was wrong. And I had to go find my tribe later in life so I could find other gay people who were happy and healthy and whole. I had to find them. If the story had been available to me when I was 10 years old, things might have been way different. But in a town of 900 people, that was not a possibility. So just like the other books that I write, I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read. And they asked me to write a young adult book, which is hilarious because I'm like a Jackie Collins fetishist. And I was like, I just want to write trash about rich ladies who tan and break hearts, but I didn't. I really was attracted to the idea of shame and how different it is for girls, for teenage girls. And I wanted to write also about living in a red state, living below the poverty line, and living in isolation, because so many of us do. And when you live in a trailer house in a small town in Montana, it's what you know, and you don't realize that you're living in poverty, and you don't realize that you're living differently than other people are. And so I wanted to write about a teenage girl who did something shameful. And, one of the literary tropes that I hate so much is that the bad girl always has to have a comeuppance at the end. She has to learn her lesson somehow and be shamed and be put in the town square. But you know what? Straight guys don't have that. They can do something totally dickbag, and the next day everybody forgets about it. But for teenage girls, they internalize it. It follows them around and it defines them. So I wanted to write a book about a girl who realized that she was worth more than what other people told her she was worth. And I wanted to write a book about a girl who burned it down, who said, you know what? I define me. You don't define me. I define me. What I did, I own, but it's not who I am. I decide who I am. And so both of these books kind of about the same thing. So if you've got teenage girls or women of any age group, these are good books. And I had this little thing to hold up that says how to get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook, Richard Fifield, author, and I love to talk to people. I love to talk to readers. I'm on Instagram at Mrs. Jake Ryan, in case you've ever seen 16 Candles, you'll catch that reference. And this book is available at the website www.mtstories.com, and the proceeds go to those charities that I talked about. And I think I'm getting close to running out of time, but again, I just wanted to say, you know, I should have talked about this book. Our publisher would have appreciated it if I did, but I don't care about this book. What I care about is telling you, reading, keep story. Your story matters. Your story can change people's lives, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, poetry, art, making clothes, whatever it is. Express yourself. People need it. And with that, I'm gonna go polish my tiara and sew a dress. And Kathy, I love you so much. Thank you.
I love you, and that's why you're King Richard. You rule. And if you guys haven't checked what he donated to the Pat Conroy Center, you're going to be bidding against me, because he's got a Shirley Temple, fan club button, a bolo, a belt buckle, but the fur hat, man, the fur hat is just,
it's made out of a badger. It's real badger fur, and badger fur is luxurious. Just kidding, it's not.
I love you, and I think you said exactly the right thing, because it's all about the story. So come to our party tonight. Now I gotta move on. You're awesome, King Richard.
Thank you.
Bow to the king. Okay, we're moving on. Gosh, you guys are also great. Next up, we have one of my dearest friends in the world. We go way back. I have author Carolyn Haines, who has, I've read all of her books, but this book is different than some of them. And Carolyn has A Visitation of Angels. And I'm thrilled that she's here, because she's had some family situations that's been difficult, but you are a trooper. The show must go on. So I'm turning it over to you. You've got 15 minutes. Go.
Hey, everybody. I'm kind of a split personality. And I want to tell you first about the main series that I write, which is the Sarah Booth Delaney Mystery Series. This is the 23rd book in the series. I have been doing these for 2 decades. Sarah Booth has aged 1 3/4 years. I've aged 24 years. So it's pretty crazy, but these are lighter, humorous mysteries set in the Mississippi Delta. I'm from Mississippi, if you can't tell from the minute I opened my mouth. But I'm here to talk about another darker series that I also write, called the Pluto Snitch series. And there are 4 books in this series. And I know you're not going to believe it, well, but I couldn't find the 3rd book. The first one is The Book of Beloved. And then it was A House of Memory, The Spectre of Seduction. And the last book that I've written in the series, A Visitation of Angels. And this is the book I really want to talk about. These books deal with the supernatural, and they're set in 1920, and they feature a detective duo, a young woman who does see the dead, and her partner, Reginald Proctor. Her name is Raisa James, and Reginald Proctor, and he's kind of a con man in New Orleans. He worked for a woman who ran seances, and they teamed up to solve these mysteries of the dead. And she actually has the talent But Reginald has his own special talent. He reads living people very well because he's been a con. He's really capable of reading people who are conning other people. So they have kind of an interesting detective agency. I do like scary stories. These are not horror, but they are scary. And I'll tell you a little story about growing up in my crazy family. My mother loved scary stories. The whole family loved scary stories. We went to see The Exorcist as a family outing in the 1970s. So we would tell stories. I got kicked out of Girl Scouts for scaring the other girls, telling them scary stories on campouts. But I was home from college one night and I was reading a scary book and I get scared. I really do. I have to call the neighbors sometimes to come and check the closets because I scare myself. It's so stupid. But I'm reading this book and my dad was out of town. In my mother's bedroom adjoined mine. I grew up in this very old house. It's a big house with, the rooms had 14-foot ceilings and each room had a fireplace. And it was a creepy old house. So I'm scared and I like called to my mother. I'm like, Mama, I'm afraid. Can I come sleep with you? And she's like, aren't you in college? And I'm like, yeah, I'm in college, but I'm scared. How about it? And she said, okay, come on. So I run and jump in the bed and the moon is coming through the Venetian blinds on her bed in those slats of black and white. And she's laying in the bed. And so I'm like telling her all about the book because I'm scared and I want to talk. And she is just laying there very still. And finally I realized she's not responding in any way. And I'm like, Mama, she doesn't move at all. And I kind of get a little closer and I'm like, Mama. And she just lays there. And I'm like, Mama, are you okay? And she goes, who? It scared me so bad. I went and spent the night in the bathtub and I wouldn't unlock the door and she's knocking. I was only kidding, sissy. I was just teasing. But we grew up enjoying really scary stories. And while these books deal with the dead and a lot of the mysteries go to the past, so you have to be kind of a historical detective also, or Raisa and Reginald do. I don't. But it is kind of an interesting, to me, blend of historical, kind of gothic, more like, Rebecca, the Daphne du Maurier, though I'm not claiming to write like her in any way, shape, or form, but more that kind of tone to the book. So in A Visitation of Angels, Raisa and Reginald are kind of developing a reputation for their detective skills. And they get a letter from a woman who lives on Sand Mountain in northern Alabama. Now, historically, Sand Mountain was it's a very interesting place. They had sundown towns on that. It's in the Cumberland area, where it was very clearly known that if you were Black or Gypsy or Jewish, you were not to be in town after sundown, that you could really get hurt badly. So they get a letter from this woman who needs their help. She is able to dream the truth. And there's been a murder in town. And a man named Alex McEachern is accused of the murder and he's in jail. And even before they're trying him, they're building the gallows on Main Street. And so Elizabeth Maslow is the woman who dreams the truth. And she has asked Raisa and Reginald to come and help her prove that this man is innocent of what he's accused of. And she knows he is because she has dreamed what happened, but she sees the dream from the killer's perspective. so she only sees his hands. And McEachern has a scar on his thumb. He's a logger, a woodman, and she knows it's not his hands who committed the murder. So this woman also has a child with webbed hands and feet that was born out of wedlock. And she has claimed in town that the father is an angel. And so she is really just about to get herself killed too. And so Race and Reginald have these conflicting strictures in this very small town where being different in any way is severely punished. And they have to come to town. Raisa certainly can't confess that she sees dead people. And this story deals with whether there is such a thing as a dark angel. And it's a battle, of course, as almost all horror is, it's a battle between good and evil. And so if you like that kind of journey, I think it's of the 4 books in the series, I think it has the most thriller type pacing. It's really very fast paced. I'm not truthfully looking to tell any particular type of story when I write. I just tell the story I'm given. I taught fiction writing for 14 years at a university, and I had a lot of terrific students. And what I always told them is the story is a gift, and it's up to the writer to honor that gift and just tell the story the best you can. In the first book in the series, the Book of Beloved, it's funny how I started writing this series because I had a very dear friend in Mobile. His name was Eugene Walter. Eugene befriended me when I first moved to Mobile, and he was very, very kind. And he told me this crazy little tidbit about Mobile society, and it became the germ for the Book of Beloved. He swore up and down. Eugene was known to lie. He was absolutely known to tell fibs. And I took him to the ballet one night when the Russian ballet was in town because he didn't drive. He never learned to drive. And Eugene was mad at somebody. We all went to dinner with the dancers. It was this big soiree. And he gets down on the floor and he crawls down the table to this guy he doesn't like. And he starts barking under the table and bites the guy on the leg. So I thought for sure we would be jettisoned from the party, but everyone knew it was just Eugene, and they were very, very kind about it. But he told me this story. He said during the Civil War, a lot of the men were, of course, gone to war. And the women were kind of at 6s and 7s. And so there was a book of photographs passed around town. And the pictures were photographs of young men dressed partially in costume, like a pirate or, and from the waist down, they had no clothes on. And the book was passed from house to house where these war widows would order the young man she wanted for the evening for entertainment. Now, Eugene swore to me this was true. And so that became kind of the seed for this book, the Book of Beloved, which deals with a photographic record of a secret that someone wants to keep. And initially, Raisa is brought into the story. Her uncle owns an estate outside of Mobile, and she lives in Savannah. She's a school teacher. She's a World War I widow, and she wants to write short fiction. and her uncle invites her to Mobile to spend the summer at his estate. And he throws a big party for her. And this young man she met on the train on the way in plunges to his death from the roof of the house. And by all evidence, he was pushed, but there is no one who could have been on the roof with him. Everyone at the party is accounted for. And so Raisa begins to see something on the lawn at night. And this is when she realizes she has this ability to see the dead. So you kind of get an idea of what the books are about. I'm working on the 5th one, which will be set in New Orleans and deals with an evil doll, which is another thing that scares me out of my mind. But of course I have to write about it because it scares me. So I think I'm close to my time. So I want to just thank everybody and enjoyed being with y'all.
Carolyn, thank you so much. If you have not read, how many books have you written totally?
I've published 80.
80 books, okay. I've discovered her decades ago when she wrote Touched. I'm telling you, her stories are amazing. You need to read them. And thank you for sharing. We got to talk. Are you coming back to our party tonight? I kind of want to hear about those pirates with
I gotta find that book.
Story. So if you could come back tonight, we'd like to hear more about it. Okay.
I have to go feed the horses. I run an animal rescue.
Yep.
And you've probably seen the cats running around. I've got cats and dogs and a 38-year-old horse I got to go out and blanket and take care of before it gets cold, but I'll be back.
Well,
Another Wonder Woman.
I want to introduce you to my friend Barbara Dean, who's off camera and is here with me. And she is an animal rescue people. In fact, after Girlfriend Weekend, she's bringing me a calico cat kitten. So I'm going to become now 3 cat owner. So call me the cat lady. So, but I'm going to introduce you guys because I think you guys would really hit it off. But she's got how many animals right now?
Me? 10 cats, 7 dogs.
12 dogs. 3 cats, a bird, and a fish.
No birds. I had an eagle once
My
for about
God.
9 months.
Oh my gosh. Well, we love you. We love you. And I can't wait till we're together again. And hopefully I'll get back down to Fairhope and Mobile, Alabama ways soon. But hopefully if you can sneak away, come back tonight.
I'm planning on it. I have to go do farm chores. I must
I know.
take off my tiara so I don't lose it in the hay.
Yep, there goes one of your cats. I love you. I'll
Thank
see
you.
you later, okay? We'll talk. Okay, bye-bye. All right, now we are on time. I'm 15 minutes. We're introducing Pamela Fagan Hutchins, and she's got a trilogy out that she's going to be talking about. And she also is the wonderful host of Wine, Women, and Writing. And you're up in Montana, is that right? And there you are with your lovely husband.
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah.
Well, it's Jamie Ford in Montana and Richard Fifield in Montana, but we have you up there. What's the weather like?
You know, it was colder in Texas last week, but I'm looking out at snow and it's below freezing. So we're up in the mountains.
Well, we're going to let you talk about your books. And so we'll be going until 4:15. So hit it.
All right. Well, thank you. And hi, everybody. Hi, Paul, and all of you authors and readers. This is my 2nd year as a Pulpwood Queens author, and I'm honored and feel very, very lucky that we're able to get together like this, even when getting together in person is impossible. I have brought along, as Kathy said, my emotional support husband. He's not wearing his vest, like an emotional support dog, but as an introvert, I need one. He's kind of like a shot of vodka, but better for my liver. So trust me, it's a good thing. He's going to interview me because I really think I'd bore you to tears if I just talked to myself, but we're coming to you, as Kathy said, from our cabin in the mountains of Wyoming. And it's a lodge in the warm months of the year. And in the winter, we just kind of hunker down and try to keep each other warm. We do not have our tiaras because we recently, after a very long time trying, sold our Texas home, and all of our things just arrived, and in the melee, I can't find them, but we have our Wyoming tiaras. So we'll put those on and try to be in the spirit a little bit. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our host for the interview. This is Eric.
So Pamela, what is the book that you have for Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys this year?
That was really good. You did really good as an interviewer.
It's going to get better.
Okay, so we've got Switchback. It's the first in my Patrick Flint family series, which is now 5 books long and counting. It's my 6th series to write, but this one is really, as we'll talk about in a minute, near and dear to my heart. It's mystery and suspense. It's set in 1970s Wyoming. It's about this a little too adventurous young doctor, his wife, who is a Texas woman and increasingly strong over the series, his teenage daughter, who we all want to kill, and his heroic young son. If you like the setting, the culture of Yellowstone or Longmire, the shows that have been on recently, and the excitement of like the movie Taken, where Liam Neeson has to rescue his kidnapped daughter, that's kind of the feel of Switchback. That's the setting, that's the pace, and it in fact is a kidnap rescue murder mystery.
These books are very special. They mean a lot to you. What can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, these are, of everything I've written, these are the ones that are most personal. 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, June of 2019, my dad got a diagnosis of 3 months to live, a really grim cancer diagnosis, and it just rocked us. At the time, I was actually writing 2 other books, and I already had 15 novels published at that point that were a little bit different from Patrick Flint. But writers write their emotions, and all I could think of to do was my dad was to write a mystery series with him as the protagonist, with a character that was the dad I grew up with, because really literally it was all I could do. I mean, I was, couldn't even function at that point. So I did that, and I was just trying to get one to put in his hands before he passed away, and they were completely a gift to my dad.
What I remember about you as you're creating them, as you're writing them, was just a struggle to get the balance right, to get his voice right, to make him the balance between heroic and funny and the mistakes he made and all those things. But also, I loved how much time you spent with him. You probably spent more time with your dad in the last couple of years than you did in the last 20.
You're gonna make me cry.
And the time that you spent with him working on these books.
Yeah. Yes. It was crazy because at that time I thought I had 3 months, and I wanted to do as much as I could to bring him completely to life and to show him himself on paper, protagonist worthy, all of his great stories from being a doctor in Wyoming in the 1970s, the funny, unbelievable, and sometimes completely stupid things he did that turned out okay. He's super adventurous. And then all of a sudden, and we were working together on him. And at first he didn't really know what to make of that. And then he got more and more into it. And it was a nice distraction for both of us. And we'd walk and talk about them. And then he kept beating the months he was projected to live. So we got the first book out, and then there was 2, and then there was 3. And now I'm about to start number 6.
Well, I can tell you, he has enjoyed them so much, and he's constantly sending you ideas. And what's funny is when he defends Patrick's motives or decisions, even though plenty of your reviewers will say, "I love the book, but there's no way that guy would have made that choice." And you're like, "Ah, yeah."
Oh yeah, he did. He did some so incredibly outrageous things. He's great because he comes along and he's a doctor in the books, and he does doctor things, and I am not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV. And so he corrects all my medical mistakes, but also he lived this life. He corrects my mistakes when characters are hunting, or when they are, what knife would you have had in the 1970s? What beer did you drink? I accidentally included a Coors beer. And he's like, oh, it wasn't distributed in Wyoming in 1976. Go with, I fill in the blank with the beer that he drank. He's really my ace in the hole for authenticity, but he is hilarious about, like, one of the books, the 4th one, Scapegoat. Patrick as being extremely cheap, because my dad is cheap, and I really try to play on those characteristics. And he literally came to me and he said, I think Patrick is misunderstood here, and was defending, not that I wrote it wrong, but that everybody else's reaction to him was wrong. So it's been so much fun.
Well, and the important thing in through all this is, you know, this started 2 years ago, and he has survived.
He survived. And just like the fictional Patrick Flint, who gets himself into these scrapes and back out of them, Dad found himself with this horrible cancer scrape, right? And he's a physician. So he took all the advice he was given and said, you know what? I'm going to integrate my treatment plan, and I'm going to do Western medicine. I'm going to do Eastern medicine, and I'm going to look at what makes people survive radical cancer diagnoses. And it's been 2 years, and each visit his cancer is less virulent. I want him to write a book about that. It's super inspiring. He can't be cured, but he can live with it. And as long as he's around to keep giving me great stories, I imagine I'm going to keep writing this series, because he keeps providing examples to this very day of smart men doing incredibly boneheaded things. It's awesome.
Well, when you started on this path for this series, I don't think you even intended to publish these books.
No.
And now the series has done so incredibly well for you. And
This
I think that's been a
has
surprise.
been the shock of my life, because I thought these were going to be so family story, inside joke-ish, because I literally take real stories from his life, and I take real murder mysteries that are of the area and blend them together, and wrote them like my dad wanted them. And so I wasn't thinking about my normal readers. I tend to write books that are female protagonists, contemporary, PG-13 or higher rating. And my dad likes PG rated. He wants an exciting book, but with a loving family, a flawed protagonist, but ultimately redeemable. He wants a bad guy with bad things happening, but he doesn't want to read about pedophilia or serial killers from their viewpoint. He thinks that glorifies them. I mean, there were a lot of boxes I had to check. No bad language, no overt sex scenes, strong integration of the beauty of nature, the love of God, and respect for native cultures. I mean, I was sitting there going, okay, Dad, great. I'm going to do my best. And thinking this may not have an audience. It's been the shock of my lifetime that this is the book that I've had that's done the best. It's been in the top 2,000 on Amazon since the day it was published, and that's a year and a half ago, and it hadn't slowed down. It's just picking up steam, and I don't know what it is. I guess there were other people like my dad that were looking for something different. You know, Richard talked earlier about write your story. It's going to mean something to somebody. These stories meant something to people that I had never reached before.
I'd read these books.
I would too. Yeah. But I guess to me, the question was whether other people would, because honestly, they're not as fashionable as psychological thrillers with unreliable narrators, or the completely unlikable protagonist, you know, that seem very in vogue, but they found their audience.
And they have, and it's not necessarily the same audience that you've carried through your What Doesn't Kill You series. You've really hit a different vein, I think, and it's been pretty fun to watch.
It has been a lot of fun. Before, I think that I had a mostly female audience, and now it seems to be split about 50-50 men, women, although it's fun because the readers have been skewing slightly older than they have in the past, you know, because we're reaching people that know what they want, and it's a more traditional, you know, view of the world. It's more PG rated. They grew up watching Leave It to Beaver, and it doesn't mean bad things don't happen in these books. It means that I kept off the page the gore. I say that bad things happen on the page too, but I kept the sex and the bad language off the page. The reviews are a lot of fun because, and Eric reads them, I don't, but people with a city background will read the stories and say, that is so unrealistic. That would never happen. That doctor would not be fixing a horse's broken leg in the parking lot. Well, that's a real story from my childhood, right? And my mom will still tells the story of the night that happened. The rural readers, the Western readers are like, oh my gosh, yes, totally. That's what my life was like. This is so real. The city readers will say, people don't fall asleep on horseback. The rural readers will say, my little brother used to do that all the time. And of course, my little brother did too. So it's been fun for me because it was personal to see how people reacted to them.
So are you still writing more in the series?
I am. I'm on number 6 and Dad has more ideas. So I'll be writing them as long as he's feeding them to me. And he just bought a new ranch, which I'm sure will mean a whole lot of more dumb things to have a smart guy do. I'm thinking probably I'll slow down a bit and just do one a year as long as people enjoy them, because I like to write them. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. I wrote them for my dad. He turned around and it's the gift of them doing well for me. And I get to storyboard with you. You're my critique partner and he feeds me ideas. It's a family affair. So we're having a ball.
I think he likes being in the spotlight.
He
So
does too.
given that these are written now quite a long time ago, do they integrate at all with your What Doesn't Kill You series, which is closer to present?
They do. What I did is I took, if you're familiar with Livewire and the Maggie Killian trilogy, which was a Pulpwood Queen pick last year, I took characters from that and did an ancestral crossover in the 1970s books. I aged back to their ancestors so that then I wrote a new series this year that my agent asked me to write that's very creatively called the Wyoming Mystery Series. And anyway, hopefully it will be out next year. And in that contemporary series, then I age up the Patrick Flint characters, combine them with Maggie Killian, throw in some new protagonists, and bing, bang, boom, you have the Wyoming Mysteries.
So you've really been cranking them out at 4 a year. Why 4 a year?
Oh God, it was an accident. First, it was business strategy. I was going to do 3 a year. I used to do 2 a year, which I still thought was kind of aggressive. But then Dad got sick and I did 4. And then last year I did 5. So on the last 3 years, the average has been 4. And I'm super exhausted. I literally finished the 5th book of Patrick Flint yesterday. And so I'm officially on hiatus for the next couple of months. And then we'll put a schedule together that's going to be a little bit more sane, because I think maybe I don't have to work that hard.
So last question, what formats are Switchback available in?
Well, because I found out there's some older readers, we now have Switchback in large print on Amazon. We've also got the ebooks and the audio. And since I moonlight as an audiobook narrator, I did the narration on these books myself. And that was super fun.
So one of my first impressions of Pamela before we got together was her singing karaoke in a bar, and her voice was incredible and her stage presence was incredible. And the reviews, like she said, I read all her reviews. She doesn't read any of them. And the reviews have been really, really good on the audio. And it's fun to see because she has a talent.
I do sing on the audio. I sing a hymn on the first Switchback book. Was it the first one?
Yeah.
I think it was the first one.
Yeah.
His grandmother's favorite hymn. But what's really funny for me as an author is the reason I don't read my own reviews is because you're so filled with self-doubt that reading something good or reading something bad, they all mess with my head. Well, now it's like doubling down on self-doubt. Now I have to worry about not only what people say about the story, but whether or not they're making fun of my performance. So I really have to stay away from reviews now and just pretend it's all okay.
So your contact information, again, before we close here.
Okay, so I'm really easy to find, a little bit overexposed. Pamela at PamelaFaganHutchins.com. Website is PamelaFaganHutchins.com. I'm active on Instagram and Facebook. If you go to my website, this is important. If you go to my website, you can get a starter library of free ebooks by signing up for my newsletter through the website. It may not be on the schedule, but I'm going to admit I am going to write a Patrick Flint short story in the next 2 months, but it's a vacation thing.
It's only 75,000 words. Yeah.
I swear, I'm going to start taking care of myself and paying attention to my family. And then I have also on the website past and upcoming episodes of my videocast podcast, which is called Wine, Women, and Writing, or because that can be a little emasculating to men. If I have a guy on, sometimes I call it Mescal Men and Mystery. And I interview other authors about their books on that show. It's part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. And so that's really a fun thing to subscribe to.
Last words.
You guys be well out there. This is a great time to read and write books. And hopefully we'll be together in person next year and we can all share our wonderful, healthy stories of our pandemic time. I just most thank Kathy, very second year, and I'm super honored, and sorry, no tiara.
Well, no, I think your tiaras are perfect because we always tell everybody to make it your own. And I'm sitting here with my web person and my Pulpwood queen who does all my mailings. We're watching this and we go, this is the cutest couple I've ever seen. I have like 5 friends going through divorce. So this COVID thing has really messed up relationships. So it's really great to see you two. Really great to see you.
Great to see you
Great to
as
see you
well.
too.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you
shut
so
up now.
much. Come to our party later tonight and or stay on board, but we got to move on. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Pamela. I love y'all. Okay. Now on to our next author. Woo, we're doing great. You know, I feel like I'm, you know, herding cattle. Okay. No, we're really doing great. Next up, we have RJ Lee, and he's got a new book out called Cold Reading Murder, starting right now at, whoop, we got a minute over. So go ahead, RJ, your turn.
Yeah, okay. First thing I'd like to do is give you a little background on this mystery series. It is the third of 4 that are planned right now. The first one came out 2 years ago, and is that position right?
Yes.
Okay, and I was at GFW for that, Grand Slam Murders, and that debuted my female amateur sleuth, Wendy Winchester. To my Kensington editor because my father had done after World War II in New York. Thus, I'm the second generation to write detective stories at the New York level. He said, you have to have a female protagonist. And because I had projected a male protagonist, but he said, women still read the majority of fiction. They are the biggest library users, bookstore users, and it would be better if you had an amateur female sleuth, which is just fine with me. Oh gosh, there's that comment again about Robert Redford. Okay, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, I have written this series as a cozy, so I have something in common with Pamela. You won't find any bad language in the series. You won't find any graphic sexuality. I have polite Agatha Christie type murder. I've read everything she's ever written, and I love her writing. I'm a big fan of Downton Abbey, British culture, although this is a contemporary American series that takes place in my home state of Mississippi, where I live currently in Oxford. I grew up in Natchez, and the town that I've created for my series, Rosalie, is a tweaked version of Natchez, which was founded in 1716. And like Mobile and Charleston and Savannah and New Orleans, there are lots of layers to these old southern cities. Lots of layers mean lots of secrets. Lots of secrets mean lots of intrigue, and it's a perfect laboratory to invent mystery series, because what I did when I was growing up as a boy was listen to the anecdotes that I heard from my mother's generation and my grandmother's generation. And the dialogue flowed with it. And one of the things my editor asked me at Kensington when I first signed on many years ago was, how is it that you come up with these very interesting, quirky characters? And I said, well, just because they are true. And some of them are in my own family, but to protect myself and protect the innocent and the guilty, I just change and blend characters. All writers blend. All writers take this little twig and that little leaf, and they make a little bird's nest of a book. So Grand Slam Murders had Wendy Winchester, my amateur sleuth, solving a quadruple murder. It was 4 wealthy bridge players who were poisoned simultaneously at a bridge luncheon, and she had to solve that one. And when she did, she got promoted from being the social columnist on her newspaper to the first female investigative reporter on her paper. So, by the way, she's a mid-20s college graduate in journalism, and she didn't go to journalism school to write a column about baby's breath and wedding showers, but that's what she was stuck with. But in the first book, Grand Slam Murders, she solves the murder of these 4 wealthy widows who play bridge, and she wants to play bridge too. That's how she got to solve the murder, because she cared about these 4 women who were poisoned. And then once she's got her new investigative reporter slot, this is the second book. This is called my COVID book. It's not about COVID, but it got waylaid by COVID. I started my book tour in March of last year, and everything, every festival, every bookstore, every library and I agreed as of March 11th, we weren't gonna do anything else. So, but in this book, Playing the Devil, Wendy forms her own bridge club, because the one she wanted to join with the 4 wealthy widows is no longer functioning. They're gone. So she's still interested in playing bridge and even teaching it at some point. So she forms her own bridge club at the Country Club of Rosalie, where she runs into what I call my ultimate toxic male specimen. He's a sexist, he is a xenophobe, he is an ageist, he is a homophobe, he is a bully, and he's a coward. And he's an ex-college football quarterback who became an NFL quarterback, and he loves adoration. He cannot stand not to be in the spotlight. And if you are reading something into this politically, go ahead and do it. In any case, he gets clubbed over the head in the Country Club hot tub. And Wendy is there at the Country Club when that happens. So she and 8 or 9 other people are suspects, not for long, because she obviously is not going to be the one that's going to be the criminal. In the book, she has 2 people that she works with all the time. That is her boyfriend detective and her chief of police father detective. So she gets all sorts of information on the inside that she probably shouldn't get as an amateur sleuth. So it makes for a very interesting relationship that she has with law enforcement. And I've been told that some of the most successful mysteries are written where the protagonist does work well with law enforcement. So those are the first 2 entries, including my little Playing the Devil, which brings up the third one, which will be released. This is Cold Reading Murder. It will be released on February 23rd nationally in all forms, print, email, large print, audio, and all of that. And this is probably the most complicated of the mysteries. Wendy has just gotten married to her boyfriend, Ross, the detective. They have to postpone their honeymoon to Maui because she has started teaching bridge lessons to people. And in Cold Reading Murder, 5 people come to her. They want to learn to play bridge well enough to join her bridge club at the Country Club. So these are 5 different people. One is a recently widowed middle-aged woman who wants to get back in the game by learning bridge. Another is a college student. Another is a would-be writer who comes to Rosalie to write the great American novel. And the most interesting of the group is a so-called psychic. Her name is Aurelia, and she claims to be a genuine psychic. She's going to tell you about your life, your future, what's waiting for you by simply doing a cold reading, and thus the title, Cold Reading Murder. After the very first lesson at Aurelia's rented haunted house, she's rented it because it has a haunted reputation, which she thinks will make her shingle more inviting. They have, after that first lesson, she gives a free cold reading to each of the other bridge newbies. Turns out they're all very accurate, particularly the first one. The would-be writer says she not only told me what was going to happen in my life, but she told me the plot of my novel that I'm going to write. I mean, she's told me what was in my brain. So they all believe that she's the real thing. I forgot to mention that the other newbie is a singing telegram deliverer for a party planning company in Rosalie. And I actually got the idea for a young man who delivers singing telegrams because when I lived in New Orleans for 30 years, one summer, I decided that I was going to deliver singing telegrams all over the Crescent City for a New York company. And I actually did that, and I thought, wow, this is taking me into some really strange and even dangerous neighborhoods. So I remembered me as that young man with a pitch pipe going all over the place at all kind of hours. And probably the most interesting one I had was to a Tulane college professor and her husband. They liked my singing so much that they filled me with tequila, and I couldn't move after the evening was over, so I spent the night on their couch. So those sort of things happened to me when I was delivering singing telegrams. Anyway, 2 days after these cold readings, Wendy Winchester, my amateur sleuth, wants to visit or goes to visit Aurelia, the psychic, and finds her dead with a suicide note saying she can't go on with this lie anymore, and also finds lines of cocaine and traces of cocaine on her face and in her nose. So apparently this is a cocaine suicide. But in working with Aurelia to set up their bridge lessons in the mansion, this doesn't make any sense at all to Wendy because she was excited about coming to Rosalie to predict everyone's future and do it quite well. So Wendy convinces her husband and her father, who are on the Rosalie police force, that this can't possibly be a suicide. Somebody did something to her. It's a murder. And eventually she wears them down and we interview all the people and we discover that this is not on the surface what it appears to be. There's something behind it that is much darker than simply either bridge or psychic readings. There's something going on in Rosalie that shouldn't be going on. And Aurelia paid the price because one of her cold readings cut too close to the bone. So I want to mention that all of these novels have been rave reviewed by all the journals, which makes me feel wonderful when you get good reviews from Kirkus and Booklist and Publishers Weekly and all of those people. The first one, Grand Slam Murders, went into a second printing within 3 months. I can't say that about Playing the Devil, my COVID novel, because a lot of the festivals have been canceled. Thank goodness we still have this one. I'm all signed up for 2022 for the fourth novel, The King Falls, and my agent will be negotiating a contract for more. So it's called the Bridge to Death Mystery Series. You can go online. I have a Facebook page for R.J. Lee Mystery Writer, a Bridge to Death Mystery Series. I'm also online personally, R.J. Lee. And of course, it's available everywhere you can get books, Indies, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Nook, all of that. So I think my time's up, isn't it, Kathy?
Yes, it is, RJ. So thank you. And have we got all your contact information that we can post and everything?
I think you do, but if you don't, I will put it in your private message.
Okay. Yeah, or get it to Mandy and she'll post it, but I think we've got it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And please join us tonight for our big Breathless Bubbles and Books party. We're going to have so much fun.
Well, I will, and I'll also sing for you.
Oh, that's right. You were going to sing. Okay. Everybody, maybe we can get Pamela back to sing.
That'll
It's
be good.
karaoke night. Okay. Moving on. Thank you. All right, you guys, we are headed now into Leslie Lehr, reporting from California. She's got a wonderful book. It's been years since she's been here with her books. She's a Pulpwood Queen book club selection author, and her book is called A Boob's Life.
Right.
How America's Obsession Shaped Me and You. And before she even starts, I want to preface by saying this is an important book. You laugh at the title, it gets your attention and everything, but the information and the research that you've put into this book is phenomenal. So I'm turning it over to you, Leslie. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Oh my gosh. And yeah, thanks for your great review. I have to say before I forget, Janice Kiernan says hello. She couldn't make it this year. And thank all of you guys for tuning in. I've met so many fabulous authors and readers here. It's such a fun group. I think the last time I was here, I dressed up like Audrey Hepburn, and Jamie Ford was Hunter S. Thompson, and Robert Coonley was Elvis. I posted some pictures on the Facebook group, but it was really fun. Oh, and I had short hair from chemo, and I was a waitress one year. It's been really fun. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. And I'm zooming in from California, where I write books and essays, including Modern Love for the New York Times. And I also work for other writers. I just found out one gal I helped with the proposal and query letter just had 3 agent offers, which is like probably more than I have ever had. So thrilled for her. But today I'm here to talk about A Boob's Life, which, as Kathy said, is it's the May book club pick, and I could not be more excited about that. And I gotta also say 30 editors rejected it. It's like no one cared about boobs, and now it's called a feminist book on Amazon, and Publishers Weekly gave it a rave. Time Magazine called a couple weeks ago about printing an excerpt. And there's a TV show in the works with a big celebrity. Kathy knows, but I can't talk about it because she hasn't announced it yet. So fingers crossed. But anyway, I'm going to start with a question, and I'm looking for a show of hands. How many of you love your boobs? Wow, good. This is more than usual. Well, okay, thank you. All right, well, how many of you have ever felt insecure because your boobs were too big or too little or droopy or lopsided? Yeah, hello, you're not alone. Whatever it is, you're not alone. I've been every size from AA to quadruple D. And one night, I'm sure many of us had, but this book came along because one night, about 5 years ago, I got out of the shower and I noticed that my nipples were kind of cross-eyed. And I just recovered from a hellish few years of breast cancer treatment. My hair was growing back, my scars were fading. My husband and I had just moved into my dream house, which was a condo overlooking the ocean. And it was kind of like a reward for surviving. We lived there a couple years. And it was our first night there. We had planned a really romantic evening, date night, a lot of pressure. But so I was getting all ready. And when I got out of the shower and looked in the mirror, I saw my nipples were cross-eyed, and I was so angry, so mad. I was just furious. And I knew I should just be grateful to be alive. That's what everyone was telling me anyway. And I was. But after all I'd been through with surgeries and chemo and radiation and hormone blocking pills and more surgery and a whole lifetime of being insecure about my boobs, I wanted my boobs to be perfect. Couldn't they once finally be perfect? And so I called my doctor. Of course, his answering machine was on, and I just wanted them fixed. And my husband, who was waiting for a date night, accused me of being obsessed. And I thought, I'm a girl. How could I be obsessed? I was furious with him. But also, I didn't know what to say, so I just shut up for a few minutes. And then he turned on the TV to watch David Letterman, who was doing his last late night show after decades on the air. David Letterman was supposed to be the smart comedian. And he was doing this, he had all these celebrities there because it was like his second to last night. And at the top of his monologue, he told a boob joke. So I am pissed off all over again. Excuse me, my language. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, I was so mad, but clearly I was not the only one obsessed, right? And I was angry all over again. And date night was not going to happen tonight because I was just too mad. My husband, of course, went right to sleep. You know how men can do that. But I just stared at the ceiling. I could not sleep, and he was right. I was obsessed, and I didn't understand why. I was a female. How had this happened? So I went in the next room full of moving boxes because we just moved, and I started unpacking. Hang on a sec. Anyway, my first box was scrapbooks. And as I looked at them, I realized I could describe my entire life in terms of my boobs. And as a little girl, I grew up in Ohio. It's like many little girls. I dreamt of growing up and having boobs like my mom. And every year my family made popcorn and watched Miss America. And every year I stuffed my bathing suit with socks to play beauty queen. My dad had an entire row of leather-bound Playboys in the den. And well, do you guys remember the first time you ever got felt up by a boy? Kind of, you know, a big deal. And I remember it because I was so embarrassed about how little I had to offer, you know? And also, guys, it hurt. I mean, you know, boys. Anyway, in high school, all the pretty cheerleaders had boobs. And when I finally got them, they weren't enough. I went to college in California where all the girls are beauty queens, it seemed like. And after I got kicked out of a sorority full of them, I just needed to prove I was pretty. So Playboy was advertising for a spread on college co-eds. So a friend and I, who also got kicked out with me, got tried out. But we didn't want to take our tops off. We just wanted them to ask us to, you know, we wanted to like wear football jerseys, but I didn't even get the chance. They took one look at me with clothes on and rejected me. I was just not pretty enough. I didn't have the bras, you know, I mean, the boobs, sorry. So after college, to get a good job, I hid my boobs with big jackets and those blouses that have floppy bows to imitate men's ties. It was really important to do that. To get dates, I shoved them up in, you know, push-up bra like this. And then I got pregnant and I got the boobs I always wanted to breastfeed. But then I had to hide them, like when I went to lunch at the Cheesecake Factory with my baby in a big shawl. You know, censorship is crazy. So I needed boobs to attract someone to make babies. But once I had the babies, I couldn't show them anymore. And after 2 children, my boobs deflated so much. I mean, they had gotten giant. And then they were so flat that my nipples hung down. And I just called him Eeyore, like that depressed donkey in Winnie the Pooh, because he was like, always had his head down. I just, ugh. Anyway, my mom saw them one day. I was wearing camisoles all the time. And she was shocked. And she said that I was deformed, which, you know, I mean, my own mom said that, but her generation didn't breastfeed. And so for years, she offered to buy me a boob job. And I just thought that would make me a bimbo. I would never do that, ever. Then a couple of years later, I went through just a horrible divorce. Actually, last time I was here, I think I'd written a book about it called Life Goes On. I mean, how to get happy after it. But anyway, or no, 2 times. Anyway, I ultimately accepted her offer. And I have to admit, boobs did make me more confident. I mean, I didn't show them, but I got to wear pretty lingerie and bathing suits with cups. And I felt more womanly. And when I started dating, I wore a low-cut blouse to look sexy. But when I fell in love and it was time to take my clothes off, I decided to break up with the guy instead because I was afraid to tell him or let him see my scars that my boobs were fake. I thought, what would he think of me? I was fake. You know, I was a liar. It would change everything. Anyway, a few years later, I did remarry and then I got breast cancer. Like over 3.5 million other American women. It's practically a rite of passage. I mean, 1 in 8, I'm sure many women on the screen have had it, or God bless, I hope you don't. But it is a rite of passage for too many women. It kind of like taking your preteen to Victoria's Secret for their first bra, or like your other daughter asking for a boob job. These are how we live now as women today. And I have 2 daughters and 2 nieces and a sister and a mom who was in the first wave of women's lib, but still was conscious about how she looks. And every morning, each one of us and all of you women have to decide if we're going to wear a bra, right? During the pandemic, maybe not so much. But if we do, what kind of bra are we going to wear? Vogue magazine still likes to tell us whether boobs are in or out this year. Movie stars on award shows bear their cleavage to be empowered women. But how much is too much? You know, when do we call it tacky? And why do we judge ourselves so harshly? So what I learned is that men look at our breasts within 200 milliseconds of entering a room. This is scientific fact. It's biological imperative because males must choose a mate who can feed their young. But size doesn't matter when it turns to literally turning blood into breast milk. But most people know that in America, bigger is better. And what most people don't know is that this didn't apply to boobs until after World War II. And a perfect storm of events happened that parallels my life exactly. I'm 61. Playboy, television, advertising, and science. And voila, boobs were no longer for babies. They're for men. And by the 1980s, plastic surgeons told the FDA that small breasts were a disease. I swear to God. And this opened the door to big business. And women have been feeling the effects ever since. And I'm just as guilty. But now I'm aware because every year, 300,000 women get boob jobs. It's the highest elective surgery ever. Every year, 300,000 other women get breast cancer. But did you ever notice they don't call it boob cancer? So we live in this double bind every day. And that's why the name of the book is what it is, because the boob's life is my story and it's your story. And for me, what makes the book special is that it's not about one particular experience. There's lots of books about breast cancer. There's lots of books about biology and breastfeeding. And believe me, I looked for them when I was trying to figure out why I was so upset about my boobs not being perfect. And if they're really wrong, you're broken, to fix them. But a boob's life is about living in a woman's body, having breasts our entire lives, being judged by them, judging other people by them, and judging other women by them, being judged ourselves. But it's about how this can hold both women and men back. Because breasts are part of our identity as females. They fulfill our biological need to nurture the next generation, with milk, but also to hold them close. We hug our children, our partners, our parents. That's why, like, breast cancer wasn't even spoken about. It was kind of shameful. Like our big important part was disease up until the 70s. And I won't go into all that. There's just too much information. But they're a symbol of everything we do. And when we think about breasts that way, we realize how important they are in shaping our experience, like Kathy said. So in a boob's life, aside from my story and all this cultural stuff that kind of paralleled it, you'll find everything from boob jokes told by women, tips on how to help a friend with breast cancer, to ways you can protect yourself against this disease that kills 42,000 of us every year. And my biggest fear during the pandemic, not my biggest, but so many women are afraid to get mammograms. Probably more people will die of breast cancer this year, because I would be dead if I did not have a mammogram that year, for sure. That's just a fact. Anyway, you'll understand also why Victoria's Secret models become millionaires. I mean, they, especially the ones who have those miracle bras made of diamonds, actually crowns for your breasts. That's what those are, right? You'll find a list of celebrities who posed in Playboy, which is a magazine created by a dude taking revenge on his cheating fiance. I mean, you would not believe Hefner's history. Anyway, a list of actresses who went topless all of a sudden after all this happened. Everyone had to do that in movies which were all made by men. You'll learn how breasts relate to domestic violence. You'll also find fun facts like the number of bras the average woman owns and why Dolly Parton is such a badass, which we all know, so many reasons. And even Kathy's involvement with the Imagination Library, which was so cool. She uses her boob power for good. But I wrote this book to understand why I cared so much about my crooked boobs. And personally, I think everyone should do what they want with their bodies, because we all have to live here. But you'll have to read the book to find out what I ended up doing. But most of all, I hope that after you read it, whatever you decide, I hope that you all love your boobs. And that's pretty much it. I have bookmarks and book plates at the Main Street Bookstore, and they're doing that discount. And if you have any questions, my website is on my thing, leslielehr.com. I'm on all the socials, and the book comes out in 7 weeks. So it's like a big countdown now. I'm really excited. This is my first big conference, so I'm thrilled to be here. So thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. And I have to tell you, I made it book of the month because it is really an important book to read because of all the research and story. It's not just Leslie's story, it is our story. And I hope men read it too, because as someone who was flat as a board all the way into high school, and then my boobs came in, my biggest embarrassment in life was when I went to go get measured for my graduation gown. The football boys go, "What do you want to bet? She's 40 double D." And I was 40 double D when I came back, and they go, "What were you? Come on, Murphy." It was so embarrassing to me. So I totally get this book, and I thank you for writing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so excited we're gonna have boobs in the White House now.
Yep, there we go.
Anyway, thank you so much, Kathy. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, as we move on our marathon, Pulpwood Queen Presents, we now have Judithe Little, who is the author of the Chanel Sisters. And I thought I'd read I've read pretty much every book on Coco Chanel because I love her. And I'm sure that I knew she had a sister, but it wasn't until Judith wrote this novel did I really know the full picture. So we've been waiting and waiting. Everything was postponed and postponed. So finally she's here. We've got the book. Judith, I'm turning it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Paul, because this is amazing. This has worked so well and is so easy. And I've been on a lot of Zoom calls like everybody else since March. And I mean, this, like, I can't even believe how easy it is and smooth. So thank you. And thank you, Kathy, because I don't think the Chanel sisters would exist if it wasn't for you and the Pulpwood Queens and everybody who embraced my first book, Wycliffe Hall. And because that, you know, you all kind of made me feel like a real author. And I was encouraged to keep writing. You know, I don't know if Wycliffe Hall had, you know, kind of bombed and I never had been invited to Pulpwood Queens. I don't know how inspired I would have been to keep writing and working on the next one. So like Kathy said, there have been a lot of books written about Coco Chanel, but there haven't been any books written from the point of view of her sister. A lot of people don't know that she had a sister. I think we think of Coco as this iconic figure who was born with pearls around her neck, and she almost doesn't even seem human. So I was reading a biography of hers years ago, just out of curiosity. And when I read that she had a sister, it really struck me, just, there wasn't a lot of information about the sister Antoinette at all, but I was really curious about what would it have been like to have been Coco Chanel's sister. And so I thought there must be a story there, you know, there must be something, right? If you're Coco Chanel's sister, you've got to have some story to tell, something to dish on her. So I started doing some research, and there's not a, you know, parts of her life are well known and parts of her life aren't, but Coco's biographers didn't really spend a lot of time on her. They had a lot to deal with Coco herself, I think, because she had a very dense sort of life. So I did my own research and found some interesting things about Antoinette, including that she really played a pretty big role in the founding of the Chanel Empire. So that was one reason I wanted to tell it from her point of view. And another reason I wanted to was because Coco was a big liar and she never told the truth about her past. She lied until her dying day about where she came from. She was born, you might be surprised to know, in addition to the fact that she had sisters, that she was born in a poorhouse to an unwed mother. And her parents, her father was a traveling salesman who was never around. He was kind of a bad guy. And her grandparents were traveling peddlers too. They were all kind of vagabonds. They didn't really have a house of their own, a home of their own, and just went from place to place. There were 5 Chanel children, 3 sisters, 2 brothers. And when Coco was 11, her mother died, just from exhaustion, pretty much from trying to keep the kids with food on the table. And the father took the girls and left them on the doorstep of a convent orphanage in France, in the middle of nowhere, France. And she spent the next pretty much 10 years there living with nuns and as a charity case. So that was something. What she denied, what she didn't tell people, was that she grew up in a convent orphanage. She made up stories, and she made up a story about her own life that wasn't really particularly glamorous. But what she left out was the part about being abandoned by her father. And I think that was something that really hurt her to her core, and that kind of drove a lot of her decisions throughout her life. That she just couldn't, it wasn't so much, I mean, some people say she was, a, you know, why would she deny her past? But it was really denying the fact that she was abandoned by her father. And so she was someone who, having grown up in that environment, life changed for her a lot. You know, if you imagine having been poor and really
the poorest of the poor is what she was and what Antoinette was. And Antoinette, through her perspective, we can see, you know, the truth about Coco that she would never admit herself. And it's the story of how they rise from poverty and manage to found the beginnings of the Chanel empire that we know today. The book ends in 1921, which is when Coco really first started to become famous, and the brand started to take off. So it doesn't cover her whole life. It's just, it's meant to be about the beginning and kind of what made her tick, and you know what drove her throughout her life. One interesting thing too is, I think a lot of people don't realize, and that I didn't when I started, is how much that convent influenced the rest of her life. And even though she didn't talk about it, she kind of left all of these clues in plain sight about her past. It really changed her. It gave her an appreciation for order and cleanliness and clean lines. And if you think about her clothing, you know, she really liked black and white a lot. She used those colors a lot. Her clothing was pretty modest. She made chain link belts that are very similar to the rosary belts the nuns wore around their waists. And she just kind of imposed this sort of convent chic aesthetic on people, and who had no idea that she was doing it. I don't even know if she knew she was doing it, but that was just her taste and what influenced her life, or her kind of vision. And even today, you know, the Chanel suit, when you think about it, it's kind of a uniform similar to a convent uniform that she imposed on people. And that she used these sort of peasant fabrics that other people hadn't used before. And she used jersey during World War I, when fabric was hard to come by, and jersey until then had been used as men's underwear. So it was almost like she was playing a trick on everybody. But one of the reasons her clothing became so popular too is because, and it's interesting to follow the story about a boob's life, because she liberated women from the corset, and she basically liberated women from the clothing styles of the time. And how she went about that is interesting, because she had no money and she couldn't buy, you know, at the time the fashions were very, very overdone, and huge hats that were really difficult to walk in, with hairpins sticking in women's heads. And you know, a lot of women couldn't even dress themselves. They needed a maid to get, you know, them into their outfits. And it was difficult to move. Coco had this great need for freedom. And I think that came from her, you know, being born at the bottom of society. The nuns raised her and her sisters to stay at that level of society, you know, because at that time it was very difficult for women to rise up from poverty. It wasn't like today. And so she really was trying to liberate herself from that. I think she was trying to liberate herself from the convent, from the restrictions on women at the time. And she made clothing that women could move in. She didn't intend to be a fashion designer. She kind of came upon it by accident, because she had failed at other things that she had tried. She was a late bloomer, which I think a lot of people don't realize either. You kind of think of Coco just, you know, started out as Coco. She was always Coco, but she actually got the name Coco from singing in a cafe. Her dream was to be a singer, and she tried and failed. She didn't have the voice to do it, but for the rest of her life, she still wanted to be a singer. She was taking singing lessons until she was in her 80s. But she, you know, just ended up making clothes that she wanted for herself and wearing those. And then people copied her. People wanted them, and especially because it was during World War I, when women needed to move around a lot more than they had in the past. But the book it's not really so much about fashion as it is about how Antoinette and Coco managed to find their way to starting a small hat shop on the Rue Cambon because she started out selling hats, believe it or not clothes. And the way they struggled as sisters and the way they didn't let society tell them who they were supposed to be, they really decided for themselves who they were going to be. And, you know, that was unusual at the time, but that's what she stood for. In fact, she even said once, you know, I realized I was not who I wanted to be and that I needed, you know, there was someone else I was supposed to be. And that's who she became. And the sort of the last thing I want to get across is the interlocking C's of the Chanel logo. I know, you know, we see those all the time and they just are kind of a symbol of luxury. And I don't know if anybody really sees anything else in those interlocking C's, but they actually come from the stained glass in the convent orphanage that is made out of interlocking circles. And so her biographers say that, you know, the origin of those interlocking C's is the convent orphanage where she grew up. So now when I see the interlocking C's, I see, you know, celebrities on TV wearing a pin or, you know, carrying a bag. And I always think of the convent and I think, do they know that they are wearing, you know, a part of the stained glass window in a convent orphanage in the middle of France? You know, I don't think they do, but at the same time, I think it's interesting because it's also a symbol of being who you want to be and, you know, not letting life tell you who you should be, but telling, you know, she also had nothing to lose. So that was part of it too. You know, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's hard for us to break out of our box or to do something we really want to do. And why did she have the strength to do that? And I think part of it is because she had nothing to lose. She probably would have ended up just like her mother, dying young, if she hadn't been taken in by the nuns and they taught her everything she needed to know for her business. They taught her a work ethic. They taught her how to sew. And those skills, even though she again denied the convent and pretended like it didn't exist, those skills are what really helped her become who she was. Without the convent, there would be no Coco Chanel, which is kind of a funny thing to think about. And supposedly she would go back. There's stories about this big car that would come and show up there and gave them money. And I think she also had them destroy the records of her time at the convent, but she did financially support the convent, supposedly. So that's kind of my nutshell of the Chanel sisters. If you are interested in learning more, I am all over I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm kind of on Twitter, but I have not figured out really how to use Twitter at all. So I wouldn't recommend going there unless someone is willing to give me a lesson on how to do Twitter. Website is Judithe with an E, little.com. And thank you all. It's great to see so many familiar faces. I wish we were seeing each other in person, but hopefully next year.
Thank you, Judithe. You ran it right on time. I certainly appreciate that because I hate to kill the next person that's coming on board, but you're awesome. Please join us tonight at our Breathless Bubbles and Books party because we're going to continue our conversations. Come dressed as your favorite destination spot because wait till you see what I'm wearing, y'all. It's going to beat these chicken feathers in my hair. So next up, we have on our agenda, we have Jill Oakley of the Quisling Factor. Well, let her correct me, but it's Janet Oakley, and she's got her 15 minutes now. So welcome, Janet.
And thank you, and welcome everybody here. It's just been a heck of a lot of fun. Before I start, I want to thank Kathy for selecting the Quisling Factor. So it's Quisling Factor as the December International Book of the Month. It's just a thrill. And also it's an honor for what the story is about. I've been interviewing Norwegian Americans for a number of years, and recently Norwegians in Norway when I went about 3 years ago to Trondheim to visit people and learn more about my particular area of the story. And they are all thanking me because they see themselves in it. they often say, you know, my parents did not talk about this time and all that. So the Quisling Factor is a historical thriller. It's set in Norway. And like The Takeaway Men, it takes place after the war in 1946. Now for us, I remember looking at New York Times things on the day I was born in February, that in 46, that's when all the war brides came. There was a huge splash on the New York Times. The war brides are coming home from France because troops came home from Europe by boat back then. And, you know, they came home, we built suburbia and life went on. But in Norway, after 5 years of brutal occupation, the country and the people, they're exhausted, they're broke, the economy is smashed. And it was a very difficult time. So a lot of people don't know the history of Norway during World War II. There's so much literature about Europe, especially France, but Norway had their own very difficult time. And most people hear about the heavy water raid. It's been in books, it's been on TV. It's the raiding of the nuclear heavy water in Norway. And it's probably the most famous commando raid in all of the entire war. But they don't know about the Shetland bus, is what I focused on in the Using affair. And that's the book that Chris Humphreys just narrated for me. And it should be out hopefully next week as an audiobook. And the Shetland bus is really interesting because it was initially a bunch of Norwegian fishing boats that went back and forth between the Shetland Islands. The Shetland Islands are not that far away from Norway. It's difficult winter travel because the North Sea is very, very difficult. But anyway, any local Norwegian that participated in helping them along the west coast of Norway, you could get in serious trouble. And that's what happened. And one of the worst cases that most people don't know about is called the tragedy of Televåg, where an entire fishing village was wiped out, women taken away, husbands sent to concentration camps because they had helped the Shetland bus bringing in some agents into their area. So some facts that you may not know about Norway. And I'm going to put up a map that I had made for Quisling. I don't know if you can see this. You see, Norway is a very long country, and you can see where the rest of Europe is. You can come in closer, but it's a very long country. In 1940, there were 3 million people living in Norway. There were 3 million people living in Berlin. So yet at the same time, by the time the Germans invaded at 4 major places, from all the way down from Oslo, all the way up to the very top, almost thousands of miles away on the same day. And they brought, finally, 400,000 German soldiers to Norway. Wrap your mind around that with 3 million people, someone living in tiny little hamlets that you can only get out of by boat. And so it was a very difficult time. The other thing is that the concentration camps they had there, they had some in Grini, which is outside of Oslo. They had another one at Falstad, which actually was a death camp where people were put to death with no trial. And I did go there when I was there 3 years ago. And the other thing is that really wrap your mind about this. They had 40,000 Russian POWs and Yugoslavs that had been captured after Germany went against the Soviet Union. They're working in the far north on roads in horrible, horrible conditions. So, and the final thing about the background to Quisling is that the number 2 criminal in Norway was a Norwegian. He was barely 5 feet tall. His name was Henry Oliver Rinnan. So all these things are happening. You're liberated. They just celebrated the 75th last May. In fact, Norway was the last one to capitulate. The Germans were not going to let Norway go. Eisenhower had to convince them, you need to do this. So these are the stuff that's happening behind the Quisling factor. So what does the word Quisling mean? Quisling is named after Victor Quisling. He was very well known. Actually, the amazing thing, he worked on relief programs after World War I. He was well known, but he kind of wandered into fascism during the 30s. And by the time the Germans invaded, he was a helper. So the word Quisling now means traitor. Anyone who ever worked with the Germans reported anybody in for, say, oh, he's got a radio or something like that. And so that's where the word comes from. So really, the Quisling factor is about accountability. And when I went to Trondheim 2 years ago, which by the way, is the most exquisite place you'd ever want to meet. I recommend if you go to Norway, fly to Trondheim first, take the train down to Oslo. It has a medieval cathedral. St. Olaf is from there. The saint was buried there, but it also had some of the worst Gestapo history in the world. And it's because of Henry Oliver Brennan. And so the things they had to deal with after the war, I spent a lot of time with the Justice Museum. They had to bring 90,000 Norwegians to trial for, working with the Germans. And that meant the most important trial was that of Henry Oliver Brennan. He was captured trying to escape to the Soviet Union in late May. And it took him about 9-10 months to come up with the indictments against him. It took 6 hours to read it. So in my story, I could read the background on the back of the thing, but I think I'll just say my protagonist is Tore Haugland. And Tore was an agent during the war. He's an intelligent agent. And he unfortunately ended up in this place called the Cloister. It's a real place. About 1,000 patriots or youthings went through this place from 1940 to the end of the war. And it was a horror chamber. I mean, just awful. I did go through the alley and see it. It's an ordinary building. And you wonder what in the heck, the stuff that went on there is just awful. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about him, that there's PTSD even in the best people who worked in the resistance. And when you go through an experience that my hero does in the earlier book, there's consequences, and people forget that there's also emotional and mental scars. And I talked to the head police officer, in Trondheim, he advises the Justice Museum there, and he got to meet several people who testified against Brennan, and it was extremely difficult. But that's sort of part of the story. Quisling is about Norwegians had to restore trust, because when I was interviewing many years ago for Youth Sing, one of the men told me, he said, trust is the fifth freedom, because the ability to trust is extremely important. And he said, what's happening after the war is that, okay, everything's fine. And it's not fine, because you don't know if you trust your neighbor. Did they do something during the war? Do you trust a member of your family? Did they do something during the war? And a lot of people that I met when I was over there, they said, our parents never talked about this. So they were asking me a lot of questions on that. So every idea of this is not everybody is a hero. And so I'm going to read just a little bit of it, and then I'm going to talk about some of the things that I have enjoyed researching in both books. So this is, Haugland is going to testify, but someone is threatening him. They're sending him notes. And the other part, they're talking about, you got to have a strong female in a story like this. And I do. The woman he loved is German-American. And this version in the Quisling factor, I made her really strong. I made her stand up. And she has a very interesting back story that you can find out later. But so I have Anna, I have Haugland, and their love is really the thing that helps him get through the trauma that he's going through as he recovers from the war. So Haugland's eyes snapped open in the dark. Cocking his head toward the direction of the sound he thought he heard, he listened long and hard. The house was utterly still, and the room deep in inky shadows. Next to him, Anna was sound asleep on her side, her cotton nightie brushing against his bare legs. All normal and perfectly safe feeling. But the war years had trained him to sleep lightly, and something had disturbed him. Carefully, he moved away from her and slipped out of bed. From a chair, he removed a pullover and put it over his boxer shorts. He stood still for a moment and listened again. It was frustrating to have to check and recheck. Before his beating, his hearing had been excellent as required for an agent in the field, but now his left ear played tricks on him. Downstairs, he went silently from room to room without using the flashlight, creeping through the large stue or living space and into the kitchen and dining room. Nothing unusual. He returned to the hall that led out to the front door and worked his way to the study by the garden. At the French doors, there was a faint light from a new moon caressing the glass panes. He listened. He heard nothing. But his eyes caught an irregularity with the doors, and going over, he discovered they had opened and shut, but not completely. Moving as softly as smoke, he gently opened the door and looked out. So he looks around, he hears a sound, and it's actually his mother's cat. So he goes back inside, and he's kind of disgusted, I'm just nervous because he's been getting threatening notes now for about a month. So he goes back upstairs. He paused outside the children's door, then on an impulse went in. Liesel was still sleeping in the same position. He had seen her last, her mouth slightly opened as she slept. He pulled the summer blanket higher up on her, then gave her a kiss. Next, he checked on Niels in his crib, remembering he had not exactly seen him the first time he had looked in. Shining a light near the baby's face, Haugland was relieved to see that he was all right. The sweet blonde face was silent, his thumb stuck into his mouth, and from time to time he sucked on it as he slept on his stomach with his little fanny sticking up in the air. Haugland chuckled and wondered if the position was normal. He reached over and tried to unplug the thumb and discovered the hand was grasping something. Haugland put a hand on his tightening chest. The little baby's fingers were gripping tightly onto what appeared to be a piece of newsprint. Gently, Haugland unrolled the fingers and slipped the paper out. It had been folded several times. It opened onto an 8 by 9 inch scrap. On one side, there was text from several news items. On the other side, Haugland gasped. The noise in the house had been real. As he turned the paper around, he stared into a newswire photo of a scene from the cloister. It had not only been published yesterday, but it was old news to him. He did not look at the men demonstrating some torture method for the press. He only saw the poster of the skeleton on the wall. Above the bony frame and vaguely familiar printing were the words, "I'm coming." So this is near the beginning of the story. This is a point where he has to make a decision, and he decides, well, he's going to have to look for another place because they've come all the way down from Oslo. I'm going to be going up to Trondheim in about 2 weeks and testify. And, it's not supposed to be that well known. I'm trying to figure that out, but I don't think the list was always published until after the person testified. But, so he thinks he needs to get the family out of there. Then he finds out that Sorting, who is one of the people that worked with Rinnan, has escaped. And Sorting has a real big grudge against him. And then he realized he has to get out of there. So he decides that the safest way to go, because he's thinking that Sorting will try to come down to Oslo because he's got his address. Someone put this thing in his kid's hand, and the stuff had been addressed to his house, his mother's house in Oslo. So he decides to go back to Lille. It's called Felstad, this little village that's south of Trondheim on the coast. And so what I'm doing in the story, I'm showing the unsettledness, because one of the most interesting things I learned there is that many people around Trondheim got mad at people that were involved in the resistance because they had to blow this train up. And this is true fact. They had to blow this train up because it was delivering pyrite to the Germans. So they blew it up, but people got mad because they lost their jobs. And one of the most famous people in the resistance in Norway, he was hounded. A lot of people were upset. So there's sort of this, someone has done good for his country, but there's not always that welcoming attitude. I thought that was very interesting. And so he's going to go up there. He'll be reacquainted with people that he met. There are a lot of people in the village. They really liked him a lot. Now, one of the things that's interesting, I think, in the story is that when I was researching Using, I stumbled across the name of a person named Conrad Bonnie Svensson. He was the minister for the deaf. And in my mind, he is a hero. His church was in Oslo. His school for the deaf was about southeast of Oslo. And he was in the resistance.
I'm sorry, I've got a buddy and it's 5:15 and we've got to go to the next author. So if you can hold that to tonight, we'll share more of your story, but we've got to get onto the schedule.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Y'all, it's a wonderful book. You've got to read it. Okay, moving right along. I just put my glasses down. I have to be able to read who's next. All righty then. Here we go. Where did it go? All
It's
right,
Kathleen.
Kathleen. Oh my gosh, the Flying Cutterbucks. Finally, Kathleen Rogers is up next. Welcome. We've got the Flying Cutterbucks, which is a novel, and I'm really excited to introduce this author to you. And there you go. You've got your 15 minutes.
Thank you, Kathy. It's such an honor to be here. This is a dream come true for me. So I've got my magic wand and my little tiara. Peeking over my shoulders is my younger self. That's a lithograph my, very talented oldest son, Thomas, did when he was getting his degree at UNT in Denton, Texas. You can't see her there, but that's my late grandmother, Olga Berg Lam. Her family came from Norway. My grandmother was a Harvey girl for the Santa Fe Railroad.
Oh
I
my.
lived in New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico. My story takes place in the fictitious town of Pardon. But I wanted to show you first, I am donating. As you can see, I love old typewriters because I'm old school, because I'm old.
Oh, me
What
too.
I'm donating to for the silent auction is a print by my good friend, Rochelle Wiseoff Fields. She's an artist and an author. She is very talented. It's called A Writer's Life.
Aw.
So before I became a novelist, I put my magic wand down. I wrote for many publications, but the highlight for me is when I finally got my foot in the door for the big national magazine, Family Circle.
Aw.
I was a frequent contributor, and no, that's Lonnie Anderson. I'm inside, but I was a frequent contributor to Military Times for 10 years, and Military Times, Air Force, Army, Navy, and they didn't have Marine Times at the time because at that time my husband was a fighter pilot for in the Air Force, and I sent him into harm's way. Then he ended up flying for the airlines, and I have two grown sons now, but my youngest son went into the Army, and I was against that, but it was his choice when he graduated college and went on. So I've also sent a son to war. So I have a huge heart for military families. So here's the Flying Cutterbucks, and it is the April book pick for 2021. And before, I'm going to do a short reading, but the announcement in Publishers Marketplace, my publisher is Wyatt McKenzie in Oregon, and my agent, it was rep by Diane Nine, and president of Nine Speakers Incorporated in DC. The Flying Cutterbucks was pitched as a serving of fried green tomatoes set against the backdrop of presidential elections for the Me Too, She Persists generation. We talk about elevator pitches. So I got the best elevator pitch after the fact from my good friend, Johnny Bernhard, our own Johnny Bernhard, Pulpwood Queen. The first line from her endorsement, which is on the book: when national politics triggers a buried family secret, the Cutterbuck women do what they do best: persevere. And before I read from the story, my son's a visual artist, very gifted. They always have artist statements at shows. Well, this is my writer's statement for this novel. This is my fourth novel. I am a writer, not a seer or a clairvoyant. Therefore, I could not foretell what COVID has done in the last year and included that in my novel. That said, I did include a lot of the other issues and challenges our nation has been dealing with for over 4 years. Cultural issues, racial issues, gender issues, political issues, the beat goes on. My strong Cutterbuck gals had to deal with it all. The quote that opens up the novel is the quote that gave me courage to write this book in the first place, because I've never written about politics, ever. I've written about social issues, but I've never been this brave. It's from Toni Morrison. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. And every one of you writers, we have to keep persisting. And especially now, our democracy is at stake. The book opens Election Day 2020. It's not a chapter and it's not a prologue. It's just 2 short paragraphs. Jewel Cutterbuck tried to control her trembling hand as she picked up the remote control and pointed it at the television. Mr. Grumples, her sister's cat, purred and jumped up on Jewel's lap. Instead of shooing him away, she welcomed him, his warmth on this chilly November night. As she waited for election results to come in from around the country, her thoughts hopscotched from who was going to be president of the United States to the dark and disturbing secret her eldest daughter had shared with her the previous day. A noise came from the kitchen. Glancing sideways, Jewel saw it was only the big yellow dog pushing her food dish around. Nothing to fear there. Settling back into the sofa, Jewel turned her attention to the news and waited. There is a dual timeline in the story. So my protagonist is Judithe Cutterbuck. In 2016, she's 58. In this chapter, it's a flashback chapter called Twirler Girl, October 1974. She's a few days before she turns 15. I'm not going to set it up. I'm just going to read, and it's not very long. Pushing open the side door under the carport with her right hip, Trudy is expecting the savory aroma of chili bubbling on the stove and Aunt Star's crispy corn cakes browning in the cast iron skillet. Instead, Trudy's muscles go limp while her heart pumps like a fist in her throat. Her books scatter to the floor, but the baton, oh, her blessed baton is still firmly in her grip. Her mind scrambles to process the sounds and smells and the terror in her own voice as she screams into the kitchen, Aunt Star, what's going on? Still in her white nursing uniform, Aunt Star's broad backside sways to and fro as she pelts the man with her purse. Let go of her, Aunt Star yells in a strangled voice Trudy doesn't recognize. To her horror, she realizes the man is Cousin Dub, the family drunk Daddy warned them to steer clear of. How did he get in? Trudy scans the room. A half-empty whiskey bottle sits on the end of the counter by the back door. The smell of liquor and sweat reeks from every pore of Dub's stocky body as he hunches over the back of the kitchen chair, pinning her sister Georgia beneath him. At 13, Georgia's terrified sobs fill the kitchen with sounds no sister or aunt should have to hear. Dub clamps a beefy hand over Georgia's mouth while he shoves his other hand beneath the hem of her uniform, a short green and silver dress that swirls when she performs at pep rallies and games on the junior high dance squad. You're a scrapper, he laughs, his crude, gravelly voice sending shivers up Trudy's spine. Aunt Star pivots, red-faced, wild-eyed. She is panting, out of breath, gasping for air. Trudy has never seen her look so scared. Aunt Star is the rock, the family caretaker, the keeper of them all. But at this moment, her frosted pink lipstick is smearing into the lines around her mouth, open but silent, as if she has forgotten how to talk. Dub's eyeglasses are askew on his white glistening face, spittle spewing from his cracked lips as his head swivels in Trudy's direction. Come here, twirler girl, give old Dub a kiss. Something primal roars through her body, her guts twist, and Daddy's voice thunders in her head. Get him, Trudy, take that monster down. Trudy dashes forward, the baton high over her head. She cannot disobey her daddy's orders. This is for every woman and girl who has ever been assaulted, shamed to silence, told not to tell. There is no shame and fear. Don't suffer in silence. This is for so many people that I know. It's for women everywhere, or men or boys that have also gone through that shame. So I've got a few more minutes. So I usually, people that know me, I get fired up when it comes to things I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about democracy. I'm passionate about military families. I'm passionate about dogs, cats, critters, birds, every animal, children. I'm really passionate about creeps out there who get away with assaulting women and girls. My other novels, so I have 4 novels to date. All 4 of my novels have military families. One of my goals as a writer, and I've been writing since I was 15 and I am 62, and I wished I had a facelift before this program, but I couldn't get scheduled in time. I love to write about social issues but with the military, so many people think, well, military books go over here. They're all action driven, action packed, rah, men, war. Well, I decided when I wrote The Final Salute, my first novel, I wanted to write a novel that I wanted to read. The closest novel that ever came close was The Great Santini by the great Pat Conroy. When I first married my husband in late 79, he said, babe, now this pilot was a Marine, because my husband was Air Force. He said, but I want you to read this novel called The Great Santini. It is you will understand what it's like to be married to a fighter pilot. Now, my husband wasn't anything like Bull Meacham. That is the book that introduced me to Pat Conroy, and I've read most of his work. I also want to mention, speaking of Pat Conroy, I was very honored that in late June of 2020, that Jonathan Howe read The Flying Cutterbucks. He's the executive director of the Pat Conroy Center, and he interviewed me for Authors on the Air for Global Radio Network. So this has been a very big honor. I've been following Kathy Murphy for years, the Pulpwood Queens. Several Pulpwood Queen authors have endorsed this novel. Mark Childress, I guess he'd be a timber guy. Mark Childress of Georgia Bottoms and Crazy in Alabama fame. His was the first endorsement that came in on January 1st, 2020. He is also one of my literary heroes, and I've read almost everything. So my time's almost done. I've got about another minute if anybody has any questions. Let's see, my youngest son has been to war twice. I have 2 grandsons, Colton, and my oldest grandson's name is Reader, R-E-A-D-E-R, but I didn't know Reader when he came into the family at a year old. So I have how many authors have a grandson named Reader? So
I love it. Thank you, Kathleen. And Kathleen has been a Pulpwood Queen Book Club member for quite some time. And I'll tell you, it is really hard. Everybody emails me, why didn't you pick my book? It's not, why didn't I pick your book? It's that sometimes it takes me a while to work in when you only pick 12 books for the year. But she's hung with me. She comes to Girlfriend Weekend. She supports the Pulpwood Queens. And I took real notice of that. I have so many authors that join. And then if I don't pick them that year, they're gone. But it's just like all the authors that have said, you never give up. If you are present at the table, and if you write a book that is fits all my criteria and a story I've never heard before, hang in there, because I'm going to work you into the picture. But at the same time, there's never any promises. I don't promise anybody getting a book club selection. But congratulate yourself for being at our table because I picked you. And that was over 600 some books this year. So congratulations to all of you that are books of the month and to all of you that are bonus books of the month. And don't let me forget to add Richard Fifield's stories of those Montana women. We'll put it on our bonus book. So I'll be adding it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Now we've got something really special going on right now because
cheers.
yeah, I'm really excited. But I've got to tell you, a couple of years ago, Patricia V. Davis came to me and said, there's 3 women out in California that have started a winery, and it's pretty cool. And she made the introduction. She said, I'm thinking that we could pair your books with their wine. And I said, that sounds like a very cool thing to do. And it's progressed since then. We've got, I think, over 2,000 members on our blog. And honey, I don't know if you know this, but there is no place I go now where I don't have this bottle that I'm showing it, because this winery has got a wonderful feature in Forbes. It's winning every award, and I've been sharing this over and over. But it also won Winery of the Year out in Sonoma. They have given us a Pulpwood Queen discount. Check that out. It's on the Breathless Bubbles and Book page, and I've been sharing it throughout the weekend. And you know, the code is Pulpwood, lower P, and just type that in. But you are going to, if you're a wine drinker, you're going to love this wine. It's absolutely wonderful. And Rebecca Rosenberg has been doing recipes for some time. So we're having a party tonight where we're going to be sharing having some trivia and prizes and giving some things away. So you want to come and be present. And I've also decided for each night, I'm going to be announcing a winner of the person who is most impressive at any of the parties by their storytelling or their participation, of a free package to Girlfriend Weekend 2022. And
oh, wow. Fantastic.
Yes, Doug? Did somebody say something? Okay. As you all know, all the authors paid to come to Girlfriend Weekend this year. Everybody paid because I had to put this together really fast, and I couldn't do it. I'm home, and because of my age and diabetes, I can't get out and work. And so this is my livelihood. So I want to thank all of the authors for being very generous and paying this year for coming to the weekend, and even the keynotes who I insisted do not pay. So many of you have, and so many of you have supported me through the years, and I appreciate you all so much. So thank you for supporting this event. I'm going to turn over our Breathless cocktail party to Rebecca Rosenberg and the owner, Sharon Cohn. And who's with you also in the picture? Tell us.
This is, so the 3 of us have been champagne sisters, so to speak, for 25 years, if you can believe it. And we always, in fact, we are in a bubble. Get it? We're in the bubble.
We're in the bubble. Okay.
We have all year, we get together on Thursdays and we take a nice long walk, and then we drink our bubbles. So these are my best friends right here, and they're Breathless wine. So I'm going to talk about my Champagne Widows series for a little bit, and then I'm going to let them talk a little bit about Breathless, and then we're going to see you all at the pajama party, which we're real excited about. So I'm a lavender farmer in Sonoma, and this is my first book, Lavender Fields of America. Yeah, Kathy, I guess you've never seen this.
I haven't seen the book. I've seen the farm, but oh my God, that's gorgeous.
This is my farm right here on the cover, and it's about all the farms throughout America that grow lavender. And so actually the 3 of us have been obsessed with 2 things, lavender and champagne. So I have been writing the Champagne Widows series for a couple of years now, and I am so blessed that Kathy chose it for an October bonus book, and that will be the first in the series. And it's about three widows, and the first being Veuve Clicquot. You've probably seen this bottle and maybe tried this bottle before. So Veuve Clicquot, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about. The second widow is Pommery, and her name is Alexandrine Pommery, and she's in the 1850s. And then you have, I've got this poster here, you have Lily Bollinger, who famously said, "I only drink champagne when I'm happy or when I'm sad. Sometimes I drink it when I'm alone. And when I have company, I consider it obligatory. I trifle with it if I'm not hungry and drink it when I am. Otherwise, I never touch it unless I'm thirsty." So these amazing three, isn't that so fantastic? But these three amazing women really made champagne come to the foreground of the world and make it the phenomenon, worldwide phenomenon that it is today. And starting with Veuve Clicquot, again, she's in 1800 and she's our first widow. So that's what the first book is about. And she actually had to fight Napoleon the entire time that she was trying to make her winery come to fruition. She knew him and she had to fight his laws, which were the Napoleon Code, which meant that a widow couldn't, or any woman could not own a business at all. So how could she run her business? And by the way, Veuve means widow. So here she thought when her husband died tragically that she would inherit their company, but she did not. It was given to his father. So it's very odd. So she had to fight Napoleon through the Napoleon Code. She fought him because he was doing, I don't know if you guys know a lot about Napoleon, but he is fascinating. He did over 15 years, he did 7 world wars with Europe. And what he was trying to do is take over Europe and all of the monarchs. He was against the monarchy and he did it in the name of the people, but he himself made himself emperor. So the book is really interesting because she is fighting Napoleon the whole time. And while Napoleon is conquering all of Europe. And so the way, oh, I did want to show you this. This is so exciting. So if we were together, we would savor champagne. Have you ever done that? Has anyone ever done that? So you take this and maybe we'll figure out how to show you before, but this is how Napoleon would open his champagne because they would conquer Europe and he loved Veuve Clicquot champagne and he would take his sword and pop off the beautiful cork. So that is exciting. And this is a Breathless Wine Saber that is at Breathless Winery, obviously. And my daughter gave it to us for Christmas. And this is on this side, she did the Lavender Farm, Red de Lavande. That's our lavender farm name. So Barbara Nicole, how in the world could she fight Napoleon when he is conquering all of Europe? Well, she had a secret, and that is the exciting part of the book. She was Linné, and what Linné is the nose. So she could smell the beautiful bouquet of the perfect champagne, and she really worked at that over time, and she actually outsmarted Napoleon and broke the law and sent illegal ships to Russia. And she knew that the Russians liked their champagne really sweet. So she made it really sweet. It's like the sweetest dessert wine that you've ever tasted ×2. That's what champagne tasted like then. And actually, the Tsar of Russia declared that he would drink no other than Veuve Clicquot. And so, of course, that made Napoleon very angry. And so he banned champagne from Russia. And that's why she had to send illegal ships, and she disguised her wine as coffee and chocolates to get to Russia. So when Napoleon walked through Russia. He had to march his army of 600,000 men through Russia. And I just looked this up. I think it's, oh shoot, I forgot. I think it's 3,000 miles across Russia during the winter. And this is after his 7 wars. They're called the coalition wars, if you want to look them up. Those wars had already killed 5 million people over 15 years. And so he's so audacious by this time that he marches his army across to Moscow to meet the Tsar. And Russia was really brilliant. What they would do is burn their cities and leaving nothing for these French soldiers. So actually, like 90% of his army died. So 500,000 men, French soldiers, died in that march. And what does Napoleon see when he gets to Moscow and it's burning and he wants a drink? He sees Veuve Clicquot. So he was ousted from office, but she won Russia. And so it's just like a fantastic story. And I'm thinking of calling it The Curse of Linnaeus because it's really her nose that makes her very discerning. And they call her nose, it makes her persnickety and very, very picky. And so she has a very fun personality. So with that, that is my Champagne Widows. And please sign up on my mailing list. I'd love to tell you when it comes out. And that should be in October. And now I want to turn it over to my good friend, Sharon Cohn.
Thank you, Cheers. It's such a wonderful sit here. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Move up. Yes, move up.
Be with you. Yes, Kathy, when we got together, actually, Rebecca and I got to go to Texas to the Girlfriends Weekend and had the best time. Everyone has to go next year. Cheers.
Put it over a little bit because we're getting half a face of Sharon.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Get close. So it was, we are in our bubble. It's just so wonderful to pair with Kathy and everything that she's done and learning how she created this amazing Pulpwood book club. It's inspiring when we get to talk about it in the tasting room because we have the books and the Brute paired in a gift box in there.
Do you want to show that? I'll get it.
Or you want to
Beautiful. And thank you so much for the package for this weekend. I've got a bottle up on my mantle. I've got them all over the houses. Showcasing.
Awesome. Cheers. You deserve it. That's a lot putting all this together. It's amazing.
Oh, this is how the gift sets are. So can you see that beautiful box? There we go.
So, and I think it's 25% off on the website for you guys with your code.
Oh, these are too? Oh,
no.
Well, you know what? She just gave you a discount. So if you want to do a gift set of the Pulpwood books, she just gave you a discount.
Run with it. Run with it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Kathy, can I ask a question?
We have a question, you guys, from Betty Koval. And
I live in Alabama, and I was told we can't get alcohol shipped here.
Right or not?
Can you ship to Alabama?
Hey, that's a question for this is our wine club manager, Lori Fantozzi.
I twisted her arm and she
Can you answer that question?
What's the
because
answer to that?
I have to sign for every shipment that comes to my house. I have to physically be present to sign for it to make sure I'm 18 and above or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Drink.
They all know me.
Yeah,
They come here every
18.
day with books. I go, you guys, I'm 64. Just leave it. Whatever. Okay.
I think it's for their records more than anything, Kathy.
Probably. Yeah, go ahead.
But no, we were at a winery in Italy in 2019, and we couldn't have it shipped back here. I had to have it sent to my daughter in Memphis, Tennessee. And when she came in at Thanksgiving, she brought a case of wine for the three, a couple of us that pitched in together.
Nice. Yeah, you have to work on your legislation there. Alabama.
Oh, please. I'm over that. I'm about done.
So I wanted, Sharon would like to tell you a little bit about Breathless. It's my two sisters and I started Breathless in honor of our mom for all the breathless moments that she created in our lives, and to remind us all to create those moments and really enjoy those moments every day. And the pairing between Pulpwoods and Breathless is also perfect because both my parents were school teachers. So literacy is very important to our family. And so when Patricia came and Rebecca came with this idea, it just made perfect sense for us. And we feel like it's the perfect pairing. And I did want to invite everybody to come to the Breathless Books and Bubbles website where we feature Pulpwood Queens every single week. It's very exciting. So then we want to turn it over to the wine club manager, Lori.
Yes, if you decide to join Breathless Wines, I'm the one that would be helping you. We do a 3-bottle 4 times a month, 4 times a year at a 15% discount. Again, breathlesswines.com. And to piggyback on Kathy, the bundle Rosé and Brut, 25% off Pulpwood to all of you.
So that's a way to start and try the Breathless and see how you like it. But they, as Kathy said, they've won so many awards. It's pretty phenomenal out here, and we would love for you to join us. So thank you for our time, and we'll see you at the party.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
To a better year this year. Cheers.
Awesome. Well, we'll be giving away a lot of prizes tonight. We're going to have trivia. Rebecca's doing some things. And you can even tonight, if you participate, we're going to be giving away to some special people your own Breathless Wine recipe in you or your book's name. So you want to be there tonight. I'm also going to give away a package to Girlfriend Weekend 2022. No matter how we do it, I want somebody on board. And I've got a few other awards that I want to announce too, but we're going to be at 6:30 tonight. We're going to be announcing our books of the month. A books of the month for the year, bonus book of the month of the year, the Doug Marlett Award, and I have some special other things I want to give out to people. I've got some t-shirts and things, so we're going to have some trivia. I'm going to have some, and Rebecca's going to have some. We're going to share stories, but the main thing that I'm excited about too, besides leaving us all breathless with the wine, is I'm telling everybody, dress up as your literary destination or book place that you would like to go. So go into your closets and just put it together. The more that it's that way, we don't want anybody to go out and buy things or anything. Come up with something that would represent where you want to go when COVID is over, and wait till you see what I'm going to have on. It's going to be great. And then later on tonight, at the end of our party, I'm going to be sharing with you, the Pulpwood Queen Film Club meets every Saturday night. And I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't have at a slumber party a later night showing of one of my favorite films, and we're going to do a little we're going to have a little video tease, but you actually will go on to Netflix or YouTube to watch this show if you're up to it. If not, watch it this week, report back to me, because this movie embodies, if you want to know the Pulpwood Queen, watch this show because it's all about the story. So we're going to leave you all breathless this weekend. And then tomorrow we have a full day we're going to church at the First Presbyterian Church in Fairfax, Virginia. Henry Britton who is one of our authors of City of Peace, has invited all of us to go to church, and we're wearing our Sunday crowns. It's online, you all. You can stay in your pajamas. But he's put the link up. It's on the program. You can join him. He's going to recognize us. Can you imagine how exciting that must be to his chapter in Fairfax? But we always go to church after Girlfriend Weekend, and I usually take everybody with me to my Methodist church. But it's always interesting because the last time we did this was in Nacogdoches, and Gregory Phillips, nobody showed up. And I was in the lobby and I thought, oh, wow. All of a sudden I see Gregory Phillips in the lobby and he's dressed to the nines. Girlfriend Weekend is over. He's got on a suit and he's so handsome. And I go, Gregory, are you going home in a suit? I mean, he lives in California, and he goes, no, Kathy, I came to escort you to church this Sunday morning. I was speechless. But the best part about it is, now I'm probably old enough to be Gregory's mom. But anyway, we walked because it was just walking distance to the church. And the look on the people's faces when we came walking in, because I know they were thinking, who are these people? Because I had on my hat and he's looking like he just stepped out of Vanity Fair or GQ. And I thank Gregory for that. And we plan to do some more things, but we'll go to church. And then in the afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock, authors, you have to be here. Robert Gray is going to be here from Shelf Awareness. It's the Publisher Insider daily blog. I've been trying to get him here since we've been doing the Pulpwood Queens. So the 21st year I've got him. He's doing a story. You want to be present. Following him will be Carol Fitzgerald from the Book Reporter. She is another Publisher Insider. If you don't know about Carol, you will know. I've got Marley Rusoff, who was the top literary agent in New York for decades and still is with Marley Rusoff and Associates. She was Pat Conroy's agent. She's Cassandra King's agent, Paulina Poroskova, all these international authors. She's going to be talking with Claire Fullerton, who's going to be interviewing her about the landscape of publishing in New York City. We've got Douglas coming back to give us how to do that elevator pitch to pitch our books. It's all about the authors. So please join us tomorrow. But for now, get something to eat. Let's play dress up and we'll see you back. Well, wait a minute. What time is it? I keep losing my, okay. It's almost 6 o'clock. So
back at 6:30.
At 6:30, we're going to be announcing our book club selection. So you want to come back. So go have fun with it. And we'll see you back here at 6:30 for the next Zoom meeting link. And we will be announcing our books. I have last year's winners are going to be giving the prizes. And of course, Jonathan Hote of the Pat Conroy Center. I don't know if he'll be able to announce yet how much we've raised for the Pat Conroy Center, but you can always make a cash donation. But we hope to help that program. So we'll see you back here at, let's see, 6:30 for the awards. And then we'll be going on to at 8 o'clock to our Breathless party. So we made it 3 days, y'all. Doug, I couldn't have done this without you. Honest to God, he has worked so hard all these days running the tech stuff. Echo Garrett, my God, you're amazing. Thank you for recording everything, keeping me on task. And Mandy, God bless you. You've gotten everything up in the chat sites on how to get in touch with everybody. I consider this a huge success. Share your pictures, take photos, you guys. There's not going to be any. I've been trying to snapshot everything and it's hard. So running it and doing all these other things, I couldn't have done it without this team. Now you know them and what great job Mandy, Doug, Echo, and Paul. And thank you so much. We'll see you back here at 6:30. All right. Bye for now.